Chapter 140. On the other end of the phone, Hu Jinyao was still worried. Then you can't drink. After all, you have to drive. Okay. She didn't like to drink anyway. The approaching figure had already walked behind her. Su Qingsang happened to turn half a circle at that moment and changed her hand to answer the phone, so she didn't see him. Don't sit with men either. All the gynecologists in your department are women, right? Hu Jinyao. Did he stutter? Su Qingsang was speechless. Do you think you have to get a rope and tie it to me so that you can feel more at ease? That's not bad. Hu Jinyao seemed to be seriously considering the feasibility of this suggestion. I'll get a long belt and tie you to me. I'll take you wherever I go. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. Are you too free? I'm very free. Even though she couldn't see Hu Jinyao's face, Su Qingsang could hear his grievance from his voice. Think about it. I specially mentioned picking you up because I wanted to have a romantic night with you. All right. Su Qingsang's voice lowered. She also realized that Hu Jinyao seemed to be unable to be angry with her. Stop it. I don't go to work tomorrow. I'll accompany you tomorrow, okay? That's what you said. Su Qingsang felt that something was wrong, but she had already agreed, so she could only nod. Yes, I promise. Can you let me hang up now? Okay. Hu Jinyao nodded. Su Qingsang thought that he was going to hang up, but he stopped her again. Wait a minute. Did you forget something? What? You haven't kissed me today. Su Qingsang blushed again. Stop it. I'm not. Kiss me, and I'll hang up. Otherwise, I don't mind saying more sweet things. Su Qingsang had no choice but to make a kiss sound into the phone. Hu Jinyao was satisfied. He also kissed the phone. Honey, I'll wait for you to come back. You haven't finished wearing the pajamas I gave you. Those pajamas. Su Qingsang only felt that her face was very hot. She hung up the phone without thinking, but the heat on her face did not subside at all. What was going on in Hu Jinyao's head? Su Qingsang turned around and was startled by the figure that suddenly appeared in front of her. She took a big step back. Su Qingsang took a few deep breaths and calmed herself down. She smiled at the man in front of her and nodded slightly. Brother-in-law. Qiu Yanbo didn't respond. He looked Su Qingsang up and down. It was natural that Su Qingsang was good-looking. Back in the Su family, no one had ever paid attention to Su Qingsang. As an illegitimate daughter, she was not liked or liked by others. Under the intentional indifference of Li Qinxue and Su Qinghui, Su Qingsang deliberately restrained herself. She was a person with almost no sense of existence in the Su family. However, the Su Qingsang who was on the phone just now was completely different from what he remembered. Her eyes were curved and her lips were curved into a smile. Even if he wasn't looking at her from below, he could still see the gentleness and shyness in her eyes. Qiu Yanbo had also come out to answer the phone. However, after seeing Su Qingsang, he hung up the phone and just stood behind her. Su Qingsang felt very uncomfortable under his gaze. She took a step back and smiled at him. Brother-in-law, if there's nothing else, I'll go over first. She didn't say where she was going, and she didn't think it was necessary to make it clear. Chapter 141. Su Qingsang was stunned and looked up at Qiu Yanbo. Brother-in-law. I'm not married to your sister yet. Qiu Yanbo suddenly said this sentence. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. And then. I'm not your brother-in-law yet. His word surprised Su Qingsang even more. She frowned. She didn't understand what Qiu Yanbo meant. However, all right, I got it. Anything else? Was that Hu Jinyao? Su Qingsang frowned even harder. Does it have anything to do with you? Qiu Yanbo looked at the guarded look in Su Qingsang's eyes, which were completely different from when he was facing Hu Jinyao. He couldn't help but purse his lips into a straight line. It has something to do with me. The Hu family had come to Lin City to expand their territory. Hu Jinyao was the most influential member of the third generation of the Hu family. He was also recognized as the most capable member of the Hu family. This time, the Zhou family and the Hu family even had business cooperation. Both parties were almost done talking, but he hadn't had the chance to see Hu Jinyao yet. In fact, he was also beginning to wonder if Su Qingsang knew about Hu Jinyao's true identity. Hu Jinyao has a cooperation project with our company. Su Qingsang didn't know much about business. She looked at Qiu Yanbo and waited for him to finish. This cooperation project is worth more than 1 billion. The profits generated every year are not to be underestimated. Even our enemies don't have the ability to take them all in one go. Every company would only have a certain amount of cash flow. To get such a big cooperation, one must have the capability. What are you trying to say? Showing off how much money they made this time. I want to say, for Hu Jinyao's company to be able to do such a high level of cooperation, it was all thanks to him. Aren't you curious about Hu Jinyao's identity? The first thing that came to her mind was the scene where Hu Jinyao said that he would buy her a car. His money seemed to come easily. She knew from the beginning that Hu Jinyao didn't look like a person who would worry about money. And him, sensing that Qiu Yanbo was still looking at her, she put away the puzzled expression on her face and looked calm. I'm not curious. He already told me. This time, it was Qiu Yanbo's turn to be stunned. He looked at Su Qingsang, as if trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. He really told you everything. Is there a problem? Su Qingsang didn't like Qiu Yanbo's attitude. She didn't want to stay with this future brother-in-law. She turned to leave, but Qiu Yanbo stood in front of her and blocked her way. You seem to be very afraid of me. Why should I be afraid of you? Every time you see me, you look like you can't wait to escape. You're wrong. That's not fear. Su Qingsang corrected herself. I just don't want people to misunderstand. Brother-in-law, don't forget. You are the one who is going to marry my sister. Qiu Yanbo raised his eyebrows and looked at the side of Su Qingsang, which was completely different from usual, with a flash of interest in his eyes. Yes. If you don't want me to misunderstand, what if I don't want to marry your sister? Su Qingsang was a little scared for a moment, but he took a step forward and said, if I don't want to marry your sister, what will you do? That's your business. Su Qingsang had never liked to get involved in the affairs of the other members of the Su family. It has nothing to do with me. Then, what if I wanted to have something to do with you? Su Qingsang looked at Qiu Yanbo's suddenly enlarged face and was slightly stunned. Brother-in-law, you must be joking. What's between you and my sister have nothing to do with me. Besides, brother-in-law, don't forget that I am married now. She was married. She had a husband. She was no longer the illegitimate daughter who had no one to rely on. Chapter 142. I have something to do. Excuse me. She didn't want to face Qiu Yanbo again. Su Qingsang bowed, turned around, and went back to her private room. Qiu Yanbo narrowed his eyes and seemed to want to catch up with her, but he stopped when he saw someone coming out of another private room. What took you so long? Su Qingsang was teased as soon as she entered the room. It must be my dear husband calling. TSK, newlyweds are so lovey-dovey. They see each other every day, but they're still so clingy. That's right. Looking at these young people, we're so envious. Su Qingsang blushed and felt very uncomfortable looking at these people. Zhuo Hongchen looked at the redness on her face and felt a suffocating pain in his heart. He was the one who met her first. He was the one who liked her first. But he was a step too late. How could he not be angry? Su Qingsang didn't know what was going on. However, the bystanders could see that Zhuo Hongchen was drinking cup after cup of wine non-stop. In the end, the doctors and nurses were still sober because they didn't drink much. Zhuo Hongchen and Deputy Director Yang were the first to get drunk. Su Qingsang wanted to suggest sending Zhuo Hongchen home, but it wasn't on the way, so another colleague sent him. She sent the other two nurses home on the way. When she got home, Hu Jinyao was already back. Not only was he back, but he had also taken a shower and was sitting on the bed, playing games on his phone. Honey, you're back. Hu Jinyao threw his phone aside, got out of bed, walked over, and hugged Su Qingsang. Did you drink? Why do you smell like alcohol? No. Someone else drank it, and the smell got on me. Really? Hu Jinyao leaned over and sniffed her mouth. You smell alcohol, and you said you didn't drink. I really didn't drink. Su Qingsang also smelled the smell on her body. Let go of me, I'm going to take a shower. Hu Jinyao stared at her little face and suddenly leaned over to kiss her. I want to shower too. Didn't you already shower? It's okay, I can shower again. As he spoke, Hu Jinyao picked Su Qingsang up. Su Qingsang was shocked. Put me down. No, I said I want to bathe together, so I will bathe together. Honey, we haven't showered together yet. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang's protest was silenced by his kiss. He carried her into the bathroom. What happened next was not as simple as a shower. Su Qingsang wanted to resist, but how could she defeat Hu Jinyao? In the end, they could only let him do whatever he wanted. As a result, when Su Qingsang came out of the bathroom, her limbs were weak. It had been a tiring day. As soon as her head touched the pillow, she felt extremely sleepy. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, Hu Jinyao's hand reached out to her again. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it and slapped his hand away. Hu Jinyao, give me something similar. Honey. Hu Jinyao turned over and restrained her hand. I can't help it. It's more or less the same. Anyway, you don't have to work tomorrow. Isn't it great? She didn't go to work, but she didn't want to spend all her time in bed, okay? His phone suddenly rang. Hu Jinyao paused. He didn't want to answer it. But it didn't stop ringing. Su Qingsang took this opportunity to turn over from his arms and escape. Aren't you going to answer the phone? Hu Jinyao took the phone. The number displayed on the screen made his expression change slightly, but only for a moment. He kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek, then walked out with his phone in his hand. Su Qingsang was so sleepy that she was about to fall asleep. Looking at Hu Jinyao's appearance, she suddenly woke up. Chapter 143. How many times has it been? Hu Jinyao seemed to avoid her every time he called her. Why? Everyone has their own secrets. She understood. But they were husband and wife now, right? Qiu Yanbao's words flashed through his mind. The identity of Hu Jinyao. What identity? Su Qingsang couldn't sit still anymore. She got up, put on some clothes, and went to find Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao was standing on the balcony. After a night of fooling around with Su Qingsang, it was getting late. He listened to the news on the other side of the phone with a mocking look on his face. Let him go. I don't have much free time recently. Don't worry, let him be happy for a while. Rising up to the clouds and then falling down, that's more interesting. In the darkness of the night, Hu Jinyao's face showed a flash of ruthlessness. When Su Qingsang came out, she saw the emotions in his eyes. She froze for a moment and stopped in her tracks. Hearing the voice behind him, Hu Jinyao quickly turned around. In less than half a second, the expression on his face changed. Why did you come out? Are you tired? Why aren't you sleeping? Su Qingsang moved her lips and looked up at Hu Jinyao. It's so late. Who was that? A colleague from the company. What colleague? What kind of colleague would make him speak with such a tone and expression? You don't know him. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, trying to change the topic. Aren't you tired? I thought you couldn't even get out of bed. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't care what Hu Jinyao's real identity was, but she didn't like the feeling of being kept a secret. Honey. Hu Jinyao picked her up and said, it seems that I didn't try hard enough. You actually still have the strength to get off the bed. This is definitely my mistake. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang struggled. Don't do this. I have something serious to tell you. I also have business with you. Hu Jinyao carried her back to the room. Honey, you don't look tired. Shall we continue? I'm tired. How could Su Qingsang let him do whatever he wanted? I'm going to bed. It's okay. I want to sleep too. We'll sleep together. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang tried to stand up, but Hu Jinyao pressed her down again. All right, wife. Look, a good night is hard to come by. Why don't we continue? Su Qingsang was no match for Hu Jinyao. Soon, not only would she not be able to find out Hu Jinyao's identity, but she would also be devoured. Su Qingsang sat in the car and looked out of the window. There was a hint of anger on her beautiful face. She ignored Hu Jinyao, who moved closer to her from time to time. Wife, Su Qingsang pretended not to hear him. Honey, Hu Jinyao called her again. My dear wife, I know I was wrong. Don't be angry. Shut up. After saying 2 words, Su Qingsang's voice became hoarse. She became angrier and didn't want to talk to Hu Jinyao. Wife, if you don't shut up, I'll get out of the car. Hu Jinyao didn't dare to speak again. He looked at Su Qingsang with a wronged expression. Seeing him act like this again, Su Qingsang was furious. But now, she was too lazy to even reprimand him. It was one thing for this guy to run amok the night before yesterday. He was supposed to be resting yesterday, so he said that he would go out to play. What was the result? They didn't go anywhere for the whole day. They spent the whole day in bed. If she hadn't fainted last night, this guy probably wouldn't have stopped. Chapter 144. Hu Jinyao stopped the car in front of the restaurant and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Here we are. Su Qingsang glared at him and had no intention of getting out of the car. Her waist was still sore, and her legs were weak. It was all this guy's fault. I said we'll eat at home. If you insist on coming out, I don't even have the strength to walk. Su Qingsang's voice was still hoarse and uncomfortable. She wasn't complaining, but she was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Let me hug you. Hu Jinyao reached out his hands as he spoke. How could Su Qingsang let him hug her? Isn't it enough for you to mess around at home? She even wanted to embarrass her in public. Hu Jinyao, that's enough. Honey. Hu Jinyao's voice was full of grievance. Don't be angry. Seeing that Su Qingsang still had a straight face, he couldn't help but move closer to her. Think about it, I've been a bachelor for 30 years. Now that I've started eating, you have to let me eat my fill, right? Su Qingsang was about to be defeated by his shamelessness. Hua Jinyao, you're still talking about it. Really? Hua Jinyao kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek. Besides, my wife is so beautiful, so gentle, so generous, has a good figure, good skin, and so passionate, and, Hua Jinyao, shut up. Su Qingsang's neck was red. She really couldn't listen to him anymore. Stop talking. Why don't you let me say it? Hua Jinyao blinked his starry eyes and said, my wife has always been very passionate and, he whispered the last few words into Su Qingsang's ear. Su Qingsang was embarrassed. That's enough. So you see, honey, you really can't blame me. You can only blame yourself for being too perfect. So how could I possibly endure it? Looking at his rascally face and his string of sweet nothings, Su Qingsang couldn't get angry no matter how angry she was. But she had to teach him a lesson. There's no next time. I will try my best. It was impossible not to have a next time. However, he said, honey, the most I can promise you is that I will control myself in the future. You can only do it once a day in the future. It was better to make a promise first. Su Qingsang realized that she had indulged Hua Jinyao too much. Really? Hua Jinyao's face suddenly changed. Honey, you won't be so cruel to me, will you? How about once a week? Hua Jinyao's face fell completely. Honey, I really know I was wrong. You don't have to punish me, do you? If you say it again, it will be once a month. Su Qingsang looked as if there was no room for negotiation. Hua Jinyao looked as if he had nothing left to live for. Honey, I've been wrong for the past 2 days. I promise, I will be more careful next time, but this punishment is really too heavy. You can't do this, or someone will die. Is that so? I can't tell. Su Qingsang opened the door and got out of the car. Although she was still a little uncomfortable, she was in a much better mood. Wife, Hua Jinyao was still following behind Su Qingsang, trying hard to persuade her. Su Qingsang pretended not to hear him. Listening to Hua Jinyao's nonsense and sweet nothings, from time to time, the smile on her lips grew wider. Qiu Yanbo, who had just parked the car and got out of the car in the distance, saw Su Qingsang's expression from afar. It was the complete opposite of the sharpness and alienation she showed in front of him. Su Qingsang, who was standing in front of him, looked like a little woman who was spoiled and loved by everyone. Chapter 145. At the other end of the car, Su Peijian got out. She didn't see Su Qingsang. Seeing Qiu Yanbo standing there in a daze, she followed his gaze to the entrance. What's wrong? Nothing. Qiu Yanbo retracted his gaze. Why did you come to Chaoan Courtyard for dinner today? I heard that they just changed a chef. It's the former imperial chef's successor. Su Peijian hooked her hand around Qiu Yanbo's arm. Qiu Yanbo looked at her soft hand on his arm and didn't pull his hand away. The two of them entered Chaoan Courtyard. The dining areas were all independent small courtyards. Once you entered the door, you wouldn't know who was here unless you had the intention to ask around. By the way, I heard that your company has a big cooperation project to discuss recently. How is it? Almost. Qiu Yanbo thought of Hua Jinyao and what he saw just now. His brows furrowed slightly. Su Peijian didn't see it. The two of them walked in and found the private room they usually booked and sat down. After ordering the dishes, they talked about some business matters. The Qiu and Li families had always cooperated. In the past few years, the businesses of both sides had been growing. After Su Peijian finished speaking, she suddenly changed the topic. Yanbo, last time my mother asked me to ask you, when are we going to have our wedding? Chiu Yanbo paused in the act of pouring tea for her. He looked up at Su Peijian and smiled slightly. What? You're starting to hate getting married too. Can't I? Su Peijian's beautiful face was a little arrogant. We've been engaged for so long. Don't you want to get married earlier? A wedding is just a formality. Chiu Yanbo retracted his hand and poured tea into his cup. He picked it up and took a sip, a faint smile on his face. We're not that different from getting married now. Of course there's a difference, Su Peijian said coquettishly. Su Qingsang is already married, and I'm older than her. It's just a few days older. Chiu Yanbo looked down and thought of Su Qingsang's smiling face when she was with Hu Jinyao. He actually felt his throat tighten. Not to mention that you don't like to be compared to her. Why are you talking about her again? I don't want to be compared to her. In her heart, Su Qingsang wasn't worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as her. However, he said, I'm just a little upset. Last time, when he told Li Qianxue about Su Yusin, he wanted Li Qianxue to deal with Su Qingsang. He didn't expect Su Qingsang to have someone protecting her. She didn't know what was wrong with that Hu Jinyao. He was bewildered by Su Qingsang. Li Qianxue also told her that she had failed this time. As long as Su Qingsang wasn't a threat to the Su family, they didn't need to pay attention to her. Since Li Qianxue had said so, Su Peijian naturally wouldn't argue with an illegitimate daughter. What's wrong? Chiu Yanbo pretended to ask casually. Did her marriage offend you too? Yes. You've provoked me. Su Peijian didn't mind showing her spoiled side in front of Chiu Yanbo. You should know who the man she married is. I just don't understand. How could a family like the Huo family in Rong City allow their eldest grandson to marry an illegitimate daughter? Chiu Yanbo had heard Su Peijian talk about Su Qingsang in such a tone, but this was the first time he felt uncomfortable. Su Qingsang has her merits too. At least along the way, he really felt that Su Qingsang had some merits that these rich girls didn't have. Chapter 146. Su Peijian's expression changed immediately. Chiu Yanbo shrugged. Sort of. I just don't think she offended you, her existence pissed me off. Su Peijian stood up abruptly and glared at Chiu Yanbo unhappily. What? What do you mean? Do you think she's better now? You're actually starting to pity her. What are you talking about? Chiu Yanbo took her hand and asked her to sit down across from him. Why should I pity her? Pity really wasn't the word. It was just that at that time, she had looked back and smiled faintly. Chiu Yanbo couldn't forget the look of affection in her eyes. Su Peijian was upset. Yanbo, I don't care about other things. You know that. But Su Qingsang is someone I hate. You should know that, right? He was her fiancé. If he stood on Su Qingsang's side, she wouldn't let it go. Look at you. What nonsense are you talking about? Chiu Yanbo placed the tea in front of her. Don't worry. She's my fiancé. But you. This was a marriage arranged by the Chiu family and the Li family. He knew it, and so did she. Su Peijian was still in low spirits. No one liked an illegitimate daughter, and she was no exception. Yanbo, pick a time. Let's take our wedding photos and set the wedding date. Okay. Chiu Yanbo nodded. I'll tell your parents when the time comes and see what day is suitable. Su Peijian's mood finally calmed down because of his affirmative attitude. The waiter began to serve the dishes. Chiu Yanbo changed the topic, as if the argument just now didn't exist. Only Qiu Yanbo knew that Su Qingsang's appearance surfaced in his mind from time to time. He couldn't forget it. Su Qingsang had no idea that she almost became the source of the argument between Su Peijian and Qiu Yanbo. She was enjoying Hua Jinyao's service in another private room. "Here, try this fish." As Hua Jinyao spoke, he put a piece of fish with the bones removed into Su Qingsang's bowl. "I remember you tasted a few more bites when you ate this fish last time. You should like it, right?" Su Qingsang's hand, which was holding the chopsticks, paused slightly. She looked up at Hua Jinyao with a complicated look in her eyes. She was not particular about food, but Hua Jinyao was very meticulous. If she had moved her chopsticks more than once on a dish, he would definitely remember it. Not only would he remember, but he would also order according to her preferences next time. Just like this steamed turbot. She had only picked a few more times when they went out to eat, and he already remembered it. "Hurry up and eat. It won't taste good when it's cold." As Hua Jinyao spoke, he didn't forget to ladle a bowl of soup for her. He just changed a chef here. It said that his ancestor used to be an imperial chef. This dish was eaten by the emperors in the palace. How can you believe a gimmick created by the Shang family? Su Qingsang smiled, but she still ate a few more mouthfuls of food. Hua Jinyao, on the other hand, eagerly removed the bones from the fish for her. Su Qingsang looked at his focused movements, and the anger she felt from being bullied by him yesterday and the day before dissipated. "All right, no more thorns." Hua Jinyao put the fish in Su Qingsang's bowl and looked up to find that she had been staring at him. What happened? Chapter 147. Hua Jinyao froze for a moment and suddenly laughed. "What are you talking about, honey? You're my wife. Who should I be nice to if not you?" Was that all? Would he be so nice to that woman if she wasn't his wife? Su Qingsang couldn't help but think. Her eyes darkened. Hua Jinyao held her hand. "What's wrong, honey? Aren't you happy that I'm nice to you?" "No." Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. "Hua Jinyao, I just think, don't worry, honey. I'll be nicer to you in the future." As he spoke, he leaned over and kissed her on the face again. Su Qingsang was used to him doing this all the time. "You kissed me on the face." "Really? It's okay. My wife has good skin. Just take it as hydration." Su Qingsang didn't want to talk anymore. She felt that the two of them weren't on the same point at all. "I mean, you don't have to do this." "What do you mean?" "It's..." Su Qingsang wanted to say that she still needed time to get used to him kissing her from time to time. Get used to him always being nice to her, get used to him always bullying her. "Hua Jinyao. You really don't have to do this. I'm an adult. I can take care of myself." "I know." Hua Jinyao nodded heavily. "I know you're an adult, but you're also my wife. Then why did you marry me?" Su Qingsang had always wanted to know about this. "I was the one who proposed the marriage." "I know, but why did you agree? Why do you think?" "I don't know. My wife is beautiful." Hua Jinyao put on a flirtatious look. "I fell in love with you at first sight. No one else but you." Nonsense again. It wasn't like she didn't look in the mirror. How could she not know what she looked like? "I'm telling the truth." Hua Jinyao leaned over and said, "Honey, you're the most beautiful in my heart. You're like a fairy." "No, no, no, even a fairy isn't as beautiful as you." The more he said, the more ridiculous it was. Su Qingsang didn't ask anymore. "Let's eat. Don't be so touchy all the time." She pulled his hand away. She really couldn't stand the way he acted all the time. Yes. Hua Jinyao sat back down. But not long after, he came over again. Honey, eat this. It's delicious. Su Qingsang completely lost her temper. She found that no matter what she did, it was like hitting a ball of cotton when she fought against Hua Jinyao. Forget it. She really couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Su Qingsang had rested for 2 days, but it was as if she hadn't rested at all. That night, however, she strictly forbade Hua Jinyao from messing around, so she had a good sleep. He hurried to the hospital. The latest news was that Zhang Mei's family had come to the hospital to take care of Zhang Mei's funeral. After this incident, Su Qingsang's reputation soared. There were even people who came to see her for treatment. For a time, Su Qingsang received twice as many patients as before. After a whole morning, he was extremely tired. During lunch, the 2 directors, Zhang Qiubai and Chen Xiaoyu, laughed at him. However, in the afternoon, the people in the department couldn't laugh anymore. Every year after the Mid-Autumn Festival, the hospital would organize a medical team to go to the countryside. It was a key project of the hospital. This year, Su Qingsang's name was also on the list of names nominated by the medical team. Su Qingsang, who had received the news, looked at the hospital leaders and was stunned for a moment. Chapter 148. Yes. Deputy Director Li, who was in charge of the daily work, smiled kindly. This time, we will also be going to the countryside in H Province, Qingyuan County, which is about 200 kilometers away from Lin City. The environment there is indeed more difficult. But I believe that our comrades are all good comrades and will overcome all difficulties. Su Qingsang didn't care. No matter how difficult Qingyuan County was, it couldn't be worse than the doctors going to Africa, right? Okay. I will send a copy of the specific departure time and itinerary to your email. The precautions and things to be prepared will also be explained in the email. If there is anything that you don't understand, you can come to me at any time. The meeting was simple and clear. It ended quickly. Su Qingsang was a little absent-minded. In the past, she didn't think much of it if she was going to the countryside, but now, Hua Jinyao's face flashed in her mind. If that guy knew that she was going to leave Lin City for a while, he would probably be unhappy, wouldn't he? Su Qingsang didn't realize that she seemed to understand Hua Jinyao's preferences more and more. And she could understand his feelings more and more. What? Hua Jinyao stared at Su Qingsang. You're going to the countryside? Yes. Su Qingsang looked at Hua Jinyao, not sure if he would be unhappy to hear the news. How long will you be gone for? About 20 days. This time, not only Qingyuan County, but also several towns under Qingyuan County. She looked at the itinerary and found that it was very tight. So long. Hua Jinyao's expression suddenly changed. He reached out and circled her in his arms, pressing his chin against her neck. Can you not go? No. Su Qingsang shook her head. This is the decision of the hospital. I have no reason not to go. Just say that you have something to do at home. Hua Jinyao. Could he stop fooling around? Her work was a very serious matter. Why did it seem like a game when it came to him? Wife. Hua Jinyao tightened his arms around her waist. Think about it. You have to go for 20 days. 20 days. Doesn't that mean that I can't hug you to sleep for 20 days? Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. Can't you think about anything else other than this? How can I think about that? Hua Jinyao looked aggrieved. We are newlyweds. As he spoke, he pressed her down on the sofa, and his hands began to move. Honey, I can't bear for you to leave. Don't go to the countryside. Don't go to the countryside. Just ask for leave. Su Qingsang removed his hand, pushed him away, and sat up. Su Qingsang took his hands away and sat up. I'm going to check the weather in Qingyuan. Also, what should I bring? Next week. Hua Jinyao stood up and followed her. Isn't it next week? Huoli, is. Do you want me to help you? Do. Hua's, Su Qingsang knew him too well. Looking at his figure, she cleared her throat and said, Hua Jinyao, stop messing around. Wife. Su said, Hua Jinyao, what are you doing? Su Qingsang was startled by the sudden feeling of being suspended in the air. She instinctively put her arms around his neck. Don't you think it's too long for us to be apart for 20 days? She looked so beautiful that he wanted to go with her. Put me down first. No. Hua Jinyao refused. Wife, I think we're going to be apart for too long. Therefore, as compensation, we should start calculating the next 20 days' share first. Chapter 149. Before she could protest, her body had been carried back to the room. The door was closed, and all the protests disappeared behind the door. Su Qingsang couldn't tell whether it was compensation or punishment. Shi Mengwan sat in the dining room. While waiting for the dishes to be served, she glanced at Su Qingsang and nodded from time to time. Not bad. It seems that you're living a good life. What nonsense are you talking about? Tisk, is it nonsense? Shi Mengwan looked at Su Qingsang and pursed her lips. Well, do you want to see your neck? You should wear a scarf before you go out, right? Ah. Su Qingsang exclaimed and quickly took out a mirror from her bag. She looked at her neck and found that there was a mark on the back of her neck. Su Qingsang blushed and looked up at Shi Mengwan. Did you bring any concealer? It's so big. Why would I need to cover up? Shi Mengwan laughed at her. It's so intense. Come on, tell me, how many times does Mr. Hua come in a night? Shi Mengwan. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. Don't forget that you're unmarried. Yes. You know that I'm unmarried. You put so much dog food in my mouth. Didn't you think that I would be disgusted? Seeing Su Qingsang's embarrassment, she waved her hand. Forget it, I won't laugh at you. I'm quite envious of you. Why should I be envious? Su Qingsang really didn't think that there was anything to be envious of. Think about it. You randomly got a man to marry, but this man is very good. He's handsome and nice to you. What's more, he's good at kung fu. Other people only want one thing, but you want so much. Do you think I should be envious of you? Su Qingsang was speechless. In fact, Hua Jinyao was beyond her imagination and knowledge. Ever since she got together with Hua Jinyao, the idea of just finding a man to live a casual life was getting farther and farther away. He did give her a lot of surprises. Are you envious? Hurry up and find your big brother. I promise he'll treat you better than Hua Jinyao treats me. Forget about me. Shi Mengwan thought of something, and the expression on her face suddenly became dejected. I don't think I'll be able to find dear brother in this life. Why do you say that? Su Qingsang couldn't bear to see her like this. Shi Mengwan smiled and looked out of the window. Qingsang, do you believe me? I really wasn't mistaken. The person I met last time was him. He admitted it. No. Shi Mengwan's eyes flashed with bitterness. He's engaged. How did you know? Because he came to my shop to order a wedding dress. Su Qingsang was silent. This matter, Wan Wan, don't be like this. I think you'll definitely meet a better man. Really? Shi Mengwan turned around and said, all right. It was fine. I won't die without a man anyway. It's good that you can get over it. Su Qingsang didn't know what was going on with that big brother, but it had been so many years. Shi Mengwan had waited long enough. The waiter began to serve the dishes, and Su Qingsang's comforting words were unnecessary. Let's eat. Shi Mengwan picked up her chopsticks as she spoke. You'll be away for half a month. We'll meet again when you come back next time. Okay. Two extremely beautiful women were sitting by the window. A car passed by outside, and it happened to be a red light. The people in the car kept staring at the two of them until the light turned green. Chapter 150. Honey. Hua Jinyao followed behind Su Qingsang and watched her pack her luggage. Do you really have to go? Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to him at all. She had already made up her mind last week. Get out of the way, I'll pack up. Wife. Let me help you. Hua Jinyao, I'm begging you. Can you not make trouble? He kept loitering in front of her, and she couldn't even pack her things properly. Honey. Hua Jinyao felt a little wronged. Can't you just look at me? Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang lost her temper. I knew I was leaving last week, but I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I haven't packed my things yet. Why? Because of Hua Jinyao. Every time she tried to tidy up, he would make trouble. Not only did he not allow her to tidy him up, but he also did whatever he wanted to her. He always had a fallacious argument. He said that the two of them were about to separate, that he would starve her for many days, and that he would not be able to sleep well without his wife. She really couldn't do anything about his endless excuses and reasons. Even if she wanted to resist, she could only give in when she saw Hua Jinyao's aggrieved face. What about now? She was going to leave tomorrow, and it was even an early morning bus. This person still didn't want her to pack her things. Actually, I can help you collect it. No, thank you. I'll be grateful if you don't make trouble. Su Qingsang saw that his hand was about to reach her again, so she took a big step back and said, Stop. Don't move. Honey. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, his expression growing more and more aggrieved. You don't believe me? Yes. I don't believe you. It would be strange if she believed him again. During this period of time, thanks to him, her waist was about to break. Could she still believe him? Honey. Shut up. Actually, do you believe that I won't talk to you for a month if you keep talking? Hua Jinyao closed his mouth and made a zipping gesture with his lips. Su Qingsang was completely speechless. Helplessly, he turned around and continued to pack. Seeing that she was so focused, Hua Jinyao turned and left the room. Hua Jinyao didn't come back until Su Qingsang had packed everything up and laid down to rest. It was obvious that he had already showered. His body was clean and fresh, and he smelled like shower gel. Honey. He lay down beside her and whispered, Can I speak now? Su Qingsang looked at him and said, I didn't know you were so honest. Say what you want to say. Wife. Actually, I just wanted to say that if you weren't at home, I would definitely miss you. Seeing that Su Qingsang didn't say anything, he held her arm. It was true. I'll miss you a lot when you're not home. Su Qingsang looked at his face. From this angle, his facial features were handsome, and his jawline was almost perfect. Honey, do you miss me? Hua Jinyao held her in his arms and pressed his forehead against hers. His hot breath was on her cheek, and his eyes were deep. Su Qingsang could clearly feel her heart beating fast. She didn't dare to face Hu Jinyao like that. That pair of deep eyes made her feel like she would be sucked into them. Do you want to? Honey, tell me. I'm sleepy. I'm going to sleep. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She simply turned her face away from him. Honey, sleep. Su Qingsang wasn't used to confiding in others. However, Hu Jinyao didn't want to let it go just like that. Chapter 151. I said sleep. No. Hu Jinyao seemed to be determined to waste time with her. If you don't say it, we'll do something else. Something that will impress you so deeply that you'll never forget it. Hu Jinyao. Do you want it? Tell me, do you want it? Yes. I'll miss you. Okay. Go down. Honey. Hu Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the lips. I'll miss you too. I'll miss you very, very much. Okay, go to sleep. Honey, I'm telling you, you must be careful when you're out. Don't get too tired. I know. Also, stay away from men who have bad intentions. Especially the male doctors in your hospital. Hu Jinyao, what are you talking about? Okay, I won't say it. As long as you remember. Also, don't go to dangerous places. Hu Jinyao. His words were getting more and more ridiculous. Su Qingsang pulled his hand away and turned over to sleep. I'm going to the countryside to participate in a free clinic with the medical team. Do you think I'm going to fight? I'm worried about you. Hu Jinyao put his arms around her again. You're so stupid. I'm not afraid of you. Who are you calling stupid? Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. Who are you calling stupid? She was a top student in medical school, okay? Why did he sound like she was a retard? I'm stupid, I'm stupid. Hu Jinyao stopped talking. Honey, remember to video call me every day. Hu Jinyao, are you going to let me sleep? Sleep, sleep. I'll sleep right away. Hu Jinyao rubbed his face against the crook of her neck. Before she closed her eyes and went to sleep, he asked again softly. Well, your senior brothers won't go, right? Su Qingsang closed her eyes and covered her ears. She didn't want to listen to him at all. The medical team's car would leave at 7 in the morning. All the members gathered in the parking lot in front of the hospital. There were more than 20 people going this time. There were doctors and nurses. Hu Jinyao got up early and bought breakfast. When Su Qingsang got up and wanted to take a taxi to the hospital, he was already ready. He carried her luggage outside and said, Honey, let me give you a lift. Why are you up so early? Hu Jinyao usually got up early, but today he was even earlier than usual. Just look at the breakfast he prepared. My wife is leaving, of course I have to send you off. Su Qingsang couldn't help but feel touched. Looking at Hu Jinyao, she spoke from the bottom of her heart for the first time. Hu Jinyao, thank you. Wife, you are my wife. There's no need to thank me. After a quick breakfast, they got into the car together. By the time they arrived at the parking lot, nearly half of the crowd had already arrived. Hu Jinyao opened the trunk. She found that, in addition to her luggage, he had also bought her some snacks, water, and fruits. Honey, take this with you to eat on the road. Su Qingsang looked at the bag and knew that the store wouldn't open so early. So, Hu Jinyao got up early in the morning to prepare this. Hu Jinyao. Honey. Hu Jinyao didn't seem to see the touched look in her eyes. His eyes kept searching the people in the medical team who had already arrived. Are all the people who are going here? Su Qingsang glanced at them. After a few minutes, almost all the people had arrived. She nodded. Yes, they should all be here. Some of them were people from other departments. She didn't know them, but they should all be here. Hua Jinyao glanced at them again and suddenly smiled. Chapter 152. Hua Jinyao looked at Zhuo Hongchen, who had suddenly appeared, and suddenly turned to look at Su Qingsang. He moved closer to her ear and whispered, "Honey, didn't you say that your senior brother was going?" "I didn't say he wouldn't go." In fact, Su Qingsang was also a little surprised. She had seen the name list, and Zhuo Hongchen was not on it. How could senior brother be here? Compared to Hua Jinyao, Zhuo Hongchen's expression was much gentler. He was also carrying 2 bags in his hands, which looked even fuller than the one Hua Jinyao was carrying. Qingsang. Zhuo Hongchen acted as if he didn't see Hua Jinyao and put one of the bags in Su Qingsang's hand. "I bought you some food so that you can eat on the way." He placed the other bag in the hands of Director Li, who was leading the medical team. Su Qingsang's luggage had already been carried into the car by Hua Jinyao. In her hands were the snacks that Hua Jinyao had bought for her. Zhuo Hongchen put another bag in front of her. She looked at the bag and then at Hua Jinyao's gloomy face. She didn't reach out to take it. What happened? Zhuo Hongchen looked at her and then at Hua Jinyao. "It's just a little food. I believe Mr. Hua won't mind, right?" The corners of Hua Jinyao's mouth twitched. He minded. Of course, he minded. Hua Jinyao put on a fake smile and stepped forward. He put one arm around Su Qingsang and took the bag from Zhuo Hongchen's hands with the other. "You're welcome. Why would I mind?" As he spoke, he put the bag in Director Li's hand. "All of you should thank Brother Zhuo." Zhuo Hongchen's smile was a little stiff. He turned to look at Su Qingsang and said, "Qingsang, I can't go this time. You have to take care of yourself." "We have to, don't worry, Qingsang will." Hua Jinyao interrupted him. "Qingsang is an adult. She will take good care of herself." The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth twitched. She didn't know who was the one who told her so many things like a child last night. Zhuo Hongchen looked at Su Qingsang. There were a lot of people in front of them, and Hua Jinyao was there, so he couldn't say too much. "Director Li," Zhuo Hongchen turned to look at Director Li and said with a smile, "You've worked hard this time. Remember to take care of female comrades." Many people here knew that Zhuo Hongchen was Su Qingsang's senior. His instructions didn't cause much speculation. Now that he specifically pointed out the need to take care of female comrades, Director Li also smiled. "Okay. Don't worry, I will definitely take good care of female comrades." Su Qingsang didn't think too much about it. Senior brother Zhuo had always been nice to people. It was reasonable that he would give her something. Hua Jinyao's reaction surprised her. This guy was like a hedgehog every time he saw her close to another man. She was truly helpless. She felt more and more uncomfortable when she met the teasing gazes of the other members of the medical team. "Okay, I'm going to get in the car. You can go back first." "Honey." Hua Jinyao's hand was still on her shoulder. He glanced at Zhuo Hongchen. His meaning was obvious. If Zhuo Hongchen didn't leave, he wouldn't either. "That's enough," Su Qingsang said in a very low voice. "Go back. Don't you have to work today? It's still early for work. I'll see you off first. I'm already here. There are so many colleagues and seniors here. Don't worry." Chapter 153. This person, he really was. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. Hua Jinyao said, "Honey, you have to video chat with me every day or call me." "I know." And, Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't want him to continue. Look at other people. They all left right after they arrived. Only he was still standing there, refusing to leave. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. He just squeezed her hand and whispered to her face, "Okay. Remember to miss me." Su Qingsang blushed. She looked at the others and felt that they were all laughing at her. However, Hua Jinyao didn't seem to feel it. He stood by her side and held her hand tightly. When it was time to leave, Hua Jinyao had to let go. Su Qingsang got in the car. When she turned to look at Hua Jinyao, there was a trace of reluctance in her eyes. She waved at Hua Jinyao and chose a seat by the window. Hua Jinyao watched the car drive away before he turned to leave. However, when he saw Zhuo Hongchen, he took a step forward and walked towards him. "Senior brother Zhuo, you got up early." "You're welcome." "Not as early as you." "Of course I got up early. Qingsang is my wife. She's been away for so many days. Of course I have to see her off." Zhuo Hongchen looked at Hua Jinyao and frowned. "Are you proud?" "Not really." Hua Jinyao shook his head. "I'm just glad." Zhuo Hongchen didn't need to say the rest. Hua Jinyao was glad that he appeared at the right time and got Su Qingsang. "I hope you can always be glad." "I will." "Thank you." After saying this, Hua Jinyao turned and walked to his car. However, he didn't go to the company. An hour later, his car appeared at the airport. Zhang Yang and Yang Wenchang were already waiting at the airport. "Mr. Hua." "Yes." Hua Jinyao put the car key in Zhang Yang's hand expressionlessly. "Drive the car back for me. Let Wenchang go with me this time." "Yes." Zhang Yang nodded. "Don't worry, Mr. Hua. I've arranged everything." "Yes." Hua Jinyao nodded and looked at Yang Wenchang. "Let's go. After being away for so long, it's time to meet those people." "Yes, sir." Yang Wenchang quickly followed Hua Jinyao into the boarding gate with anticipation. Destination, Rong City. Rong City. Lin City was in the south, and Rong City was in the north. It was already past the Mid-Autumn Festival, but Lin City was still very hot. Many people were wearing short-sleeved shirts. Rongcheng had to wear a windbreaker. The Hua family's main residence was a 20-minute drive from the city center. It would take an hour to get there from the airport. Hua Jinyao had already dealt with some documents in the car. When they arrived at the Hua Manor, he asked Yang Wenchang to return to the company first. He got out of the car and entered the house. "Second young master, you're back." As soon as he entered the door, a servant greeted him and took the coat from his hands. "Yes." Hua Jinyao nodded and glanced at the living room. The servant said, "Sir has gone to the company." Madam had an appointment in the morning, so she went out. "Old master is upstairs in the study. He heard you coming back just now and asked you to go up first." "Got it." Hua Jinyao waved his hands and was about to go upstairs. However, a figure came down from upstairs first. The servant looked at Hua Jinyao and wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. That person was obviously the person she didn't have time to tell just now. "You can leave." Hua Jinyao looked at the person expressionlessly. The servant took the coat and left. Chapter 154. TSK. Finally willing to come back. "I thought you were going to die in Lin City and never come back." Hua Yifan, the eldest son of Hua Jinyao's uncle, Hua Mingliang. Hua Mingliang's family did not usually live in the Hua family's main residence. It was rare for him to appear here. Hua Jiniao's grandfather, Hua Yangping, had 3 children. The eldest, Hua Mingguang, was Hua Jiniao's father. The second son, Hua Mingliang, had 2 sons, Hua Yifan and Hua Yang. He also had a daughter, Hua Manzi. Third brother, Hua Mingmei. She was married to Wei Nantian, the eldest son of the Wei family, who was also one of the upper-class families in Rong City. He gave birth to Wei Sihai and Wei Siming. The Hua family was a big family, and Hua Yangping had a brother, Hua Yangyuan, who did not engage in business, but walked the path of righteousness. One of his younger sisters, Hua Yangxiu, was married to the commander of an army. In other words, the Hua family was extremely famous and had connections in all the realms. However, the most famous one was Hua Yangping. He started from scratch and accumulated a huge amount of wealth. At the same time, they were very resourceful. Almost all the businesses that the Hua family invested in were profitable. This was also the reason why the headquarters of the Hua family was called Tianyu. Under the sky, there were areas that the Hua family was involved in. Hua Mingguang was the current chairman of Tianyu Company. After he retired from Huali, he started to take over Tianyu. Compared to Hua Yangping, his methods were fierce but not gentle. Among Hua Yangping's 3 children, he was the one he liked the most. Because of Hua Mingguang's existence, the first branch of the Hua family had the most say in the entire Hua family. Although Hua Mingliang and Hua Mingmei both held positions in Tianyu, their authority was much smaller than Hua Mingguang's. This also made Hua Yifan, who was the younger cousin, very unhappy. In his opinion, he was no less capable than his cousin, Hua Jiniao. Yifan, you must be joking. Rome City is my home. How could I not come back? Really? Hua Yifan sneered. Do you still think of this place as your home? I thought you were calling Lin City your home now. After all, Big Aunt and Big Uncle have been waiting for you to come back for so long, but you still haven't come back. Opening up a new market will naturally be more hectic and tiring. Not to mention my parents, even my grandpa understands me. But, Hua Jiniao glanced at Hua Yifan and chuckled. Of course, you wouldn't understand such a situation. After all, your ability is limited. How could I let you do something like opening up a new territory? Hua Jiniao. Hua Yifan didn't even call him cousin anymore. Don't go too far. Am I wrong? I'm really sorry. Hua Jiniao spread his hands. Usually, the truth is always unpopular. Excuse me, I still have to go up and look for Grandpa. He walked past Hua Yifan and headed upstairs. Hua Yifan's cold voice sounded behind him. Hua Jiniao, don't be so smug. No matter how capable you are, if Uncle doesn't support you, don't even think about sitting in that position. Don't worry. Even if he doesn't support me, he won't support you, Hua Jiniao said without looking back. After all, your aptitude is too ordinary. Ignoring Hua Yifan's sullen face, Hua Jiniao went straight upstairs. The main residence of the Hua family had 5 floors. Hua Yangping lived on the 2nd floor. In addition to his bedroom, there was also a study that was specially for him. When Hua Jiniao entered the door, Hua Yangping had just finished writing a piece of calligraphy. He took a step back and looked at his writing. He didn't even raise his head when he heard the door open. Chapter 155. What? You know I'm back. Hua Yangping's voice didn't sound old, but rather quite energetic. Hua Jiniao took a few steps forward and stood beside him. Grandpa, your handwriting is getting better and better. Don't flatter me. Hua Yangping glanced at him, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry on his expressionless face. I'm old and won't fall for this. Grandpa, what are you saying? How is this flattery? Hua Jinyao pointed at the words written by Hu Yangping and said, look here and here. The strokes are strong and vigorous. To be honest, Grandpa's handwriting is getting stronger and stronger. Hu Yangping stepped back and sat down on the chair. He picked up the cup of tea beside him and took a sip. Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao stood up straight. Every time Hu Yangping called his full name, it meant that he was very angry. Grandpa, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to shout so loudly. If you're afraid that I'll shout, then don't do anything that will make me angry. How did I make you angry? Hu Yangping was over 80 years old, but he was full of energy and vigor. Seeing that Hu Jinyao was pretending to be dumb, he sneered. Do you think I don't know what you did in Lin City? Grandpa. His voice carried the meaning of begging for mercy. I'm old, and you always have your own ideas, so I'm too lazy to care about you. Talk to your father yourself. Hua Jinyao's expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, Grandpa, don't worry. As long as you don't object, I'm relieved. What are you worried about? Hu Yangping glared at him. If she's really a good girl, bring her back. Is there anything shameful about the Hua family's eldest granddaughter-in-law? Grandpa. He wanted to bring Su Qingsang back, but now was not the time. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Your mother has already helped you secure the position. Hua Jinyao's expression changed. He pursed his lips into a straight line and stood there with his brows tightly knitted together. Grandpa, I understand. Thank you, Grandpa. Hua Jinyao took a shower and changed. Then, he returned to his study to deal with some official matters. At dinner time, Hua Jinyao's parents came back. A servant came up and asked Hua Jinyao to go downstairs for dinner. When Hua Jinyao went downstairs, his parents, Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia, were already seated at the dining table. You still know to come back. It was exactly the same as old Master Hu Yangping's opening remarks. Hua Mingguang looked at his son with obvious dissatisfaction in his eyes. Dad, what are you talking about? This is my home. Of course I have to come back. You still know that this is your home. Hua Mingguang snorted. I thought you didn't know where your home was. Hua Jinyao pretended not to hear her. He smiled at Aunt Lu, who had pulled out a chair for him. Thank you, Aunt Lu. Turning to look at Hua Mingguang, he raised his eyebrows in confusion. How could you not know? The Hua family was such a unique place that everyone in Rome City knew about it. I'm no exception. Lu Tongjia was infuriated by his reaction. Enough. What's with that cheeky smile every day? How old are you, yet you still don't behave properly? Hua Jinyao rubbed his nose and sat up straight on purpose, placing his hands on his knees. He turned to look at Lu Tongjia. He gestured for her to shut up again. Lu Tongjia was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Hua Jinyao. Tell me, I'm not deaf. Chapter 156. Finally, he calmed down. There was no anger on his face, only indifference. Since you're back, put your marriage with Ruoli on the agenda as soon as possible. I've already made a good day for you. The 30th of next month will be a good day. The Su family has also agreed. The wedding will be organized by the wedding company. You just have to attend. Mom. Hua Jinyao was still sitting in the same position, but he turned his head to look at Lu Tongjia. I forgot to tell you. I'm already married. Lu Tongjia's expression changed again. She stared at Hua Jinyao, trying to suppress her anger. If you're talking about your marriage with that illegitimate daughter of unknown origin in Lin City, don't mention it. I won't admit it. I only admit that Ruoli is my daughter-in-law. Mom, you seem to be mistaken about one thing. Ching Sang and I have already gotten our marriage certificate. We are legally married. If you want me to marry Su Ruoli, aren't you asking me to commit bigamy? You can still get a divorce after you get married. Lu Tongjia said in a tone that left no room for negotiation. That ignorant woman only wants money. She can be sent away with money. Hua Jinyao's expression began to change. He wanted to say something, but Lu Tongjia didn't give him a chance. I'll give you half a month to break up with that woman. The Hua family can give you as much money as you want. In half a month, you must come back to Rong City to prepare for your wedding with Ruoli. She said it without hesitation. Hui Yangping and Hua Mingguang, who were at the dining table, just watched. Hua Jinyao nodded and looked at Lu Tongjia with a chuckle. What if I say no? Hua Jinyao. Are you purposely going against me? Why would I deliberately go against you? Hua Jinyao shrugged. It's just that I'm already married, and I don't want to get a divorce. I'm not going against you. Hua Jinyao, please be clear about one thing. Everything you have now is given by the Hua family. Lu Tongjia suddenly stood up. If you don't break up with that woman, then don't blame me for being rude. Hua Jinyao's expression also changed. He put away his cynical attitude, stood up, and looked at Lu Tongjia. Then, Mom, what do you want me to do? What do you think? Lu Tongjia sneered. He disobeyed his elders and made a private commitment. What do you think I can do to an unfilial son like you? Do whatever you want. Anyway, I can't divorce Ching Sang or marry Su Ruoli. If you want a marriage alliance, you can ask Hui Yifan or even Hui Yang to go. At the very least, there was Wei Sihai and his cousins. I don't understand. Why do you insist on my marriage? Do you think I want to pick you? If it wasn't for him. If it weren't for, Lu Tongjia suddenly paused. She was trying her best to control her emotions. Hui Yangping and Hua Mingguang didn't look happy at this moment. They obviously knew what Lu Tongjia was going to say next. Hua Jinyao also knew that, but his expression didn't even change. He just stood there like a pine tree. If it weren't for. Lu Tongjia put her hands on the table. Before she could finish her sentence, Hua Jinyao's phone rang. Su Qingsang was on the other end of the line. At this moment, all the emotions on Hua Jinyao's face disappeared without a trace. He picked up his phone, turned around, and walked out of the dining room to answer the phone. Hello. Su Qingsang's voice came from the other end of the line. She sounded a little tired. Chapter 157. Hua Jinyao very sensitively captured the trace of emotion in her voice. Nothing. Su Qingsang yawned. A large part of the road was under construction when we came here. It could have taken us 2.5 hours, but it took us 4 hours. Then, before we settled down, the hospital we stayed in had a car accident. A bunch of injured people were sent here, and we all went up to help. Now we finally have some time. Honey, you've worked hard. Hua Jinyao's voice was not serious as usual. It's a pity that I'm not by your side. Otherwise, I could give you a massage. I don't want your massage. Forget it. Didn't he say he was going to give her a massage every single time, but the massage turned out to be a different story? If you don't want my massage, then what should I do? Hua Jinyao seemed to be very distressed. I'm not by your side right now. I can't help you if you're tired. Nothing, I just want to tell you. Actually, she wasn't particularly tired. It wasn't like she had never been more tired before. But strangely, it seemed that whenever he was by her side, she couldn't help but want to tell him. She wanted to hear him comfort her and call her wife in that voice she was already familiar with. How about this, honey? Hu Jinyao seemed to have thought of something. I'll kiss you. Promise you won't be tired. Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao slapped the phone with a pop sound. Feeling that it wasn't enough, he kissed it 2 or 3 more times. Honey, do you feel my kiss of love? Su Qingsang blushed. Even though she knew that Hu Jinyao couldn't see through the phone, she couldn't help blushing. Stop it. You don't feel it. Then do it again. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. That's enough. I'm going to eat. Eating at this time. Hu Jinyao was here because Hu Mingguang and the others came back late. Why was Su Qingsang so late? Yes. I have no choice. I've been busy until now. She was about to eat. She remembered that Hu Jinyao had asked her to call him when she arrived. Su Qingsang had been busy with other doctors before, but now she thought of contacting Hu Jinyao. Then wife, hurry up. If you're hungry, I'll feel bad. Glib. How is this glib tongue? Hu Jinyao retorted with a serious face, I don't care, honey. I'll check you after you come back. If you don't take good care of yourself and end up losing weight or becoming lighter, I will punish you. How do you want to punish me? Su Qingsang didn't believe that he would dare to do anything to her. How do you think I can punish you? Hu Jinyao smiled meaningfully. He spat out 2 words. Su Qingsang's face turned even redder. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm hanging up. Honey. Hu Jinyao stopped her. You seem to have forgotten something, haven't you? What is it? What do you think? Hu Jinyao didn't mind reminding her. I've already sent you so many love kisses. Are you going to hang up on me just like that? Su Qingsang was defeated by him. In the end, she had no choice but to kiss the phone. Hu Jinyao was satisfied and finally let her go. He hung up the phone and turned around, only to find Hu Mingguang standing behind him. Hu Jinyao wasn't embarrassed at all when he heard him talking on the phone. He walked past him and continued in the direction of the restaurant. Hu Mingguang blocked his way and stared at Hu Jinyao with a serious expression. Chapter 158. Hearing this, Hu Jinyao couldn't help but want to laugh. Dad, what are you talking about? Qingsang and I even got a marriage certificate. You can get a divorce after you get married. Hu Mingguang frowned. I believe the Su family won't mind. But I do mind. Hu Jinyao interrupted him. I mind my divorce. I don't mind who I marry either. Hu Jinyao. Don't be too willful. Don't forget that your surname is Hua. Yes. My surname is Hua. Hu Jinyao nodded and didn't deny it. So, you want to use this to kidnap me? It's not kidnapping. I want to remind you of the responsibilities and obligations that you should bear as a descendant of the Hua family. Hu Mingguang's eyes were sharp, and his face, which was somewhat similar to Hu Jinyao's, had an undeniable strength. I refuse. Hu Jinyao looked at him. The father and son were similar in height and appearance. The same aura. Hu Jinyao. You, don't say anything else. Hu Jinyao's eyes flashed with gloominess. I know what you want to say. I know it all. But I won't listen. I refuse. Hu Jinyao said this and turned to walk out. It seems that you don't welcome me in this house. In that case, I'd better not be an eyesore for now. Before Hu Mingguang could stop him, Hu Jinyao had already strode out the door. Shi Mingwan's wedding dress design studio had been open for 2 years. She designed high-end dresses and wedding dresses. She had a small reputation in the industry. People who knew her all said that she was a genius designer. Even if she hadn't been able to squeeze into the top domestic designers, there were many people in Lin City who asked her to design wedding dresses. The wedding dress that Su Qingsang wore before was designed by Shi Mengwan, but she didn't expect that one day Su Peijian would also come to her to design a wedding dress. Looking at Qiu Yanbo and Su Peijian in front of her, Shi Mengwan really didn't want to accept business from these two people. Miss Su, Mr. Qiu, I wonder if you have any special requests. Su Peijian's face was cold, and she looked very unhappy. In her opinion, she should go to Milan or Paris to find a top-notch designer to design a wedding dress that suited her status. But Qiu Yanbo actually brought her to Shi Mengwan. Can you order wedding dresses from Milan and Paris? Su Peijian looked proud. Shi Mengwan resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Sorry to disappoint you. We only sell wedding dresses designed by me. Su Peijian didn't even think about sitting down. She turned around and looked at Qiu Yanbo. Yanbo, let's go. Don't worry. Qiu Yanbo glanced at Shi Mengwan and put his hands on Su Peijian's shoulders. Just let her design it. If you're satisfied, then use it. If you're not, then we'll go to Paris or Milan to order, okay? Su Peijian didn't look too happy, but she didn't object. Shi Mengwan had no choice but to take out a pen and paper and listen to Su Peijian's instructions. Shi Mengwan wrote down Su Peijian's request in detail and seriously. Then, she sent them off with a fake smile on her face. When he entered the house, he couldn't help but call Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was very busy. Although Qingyuan County was a small county, it had many towns and villages. This time, they had to go to every village for free medical consultation. 20 days in 9 towns and villages, an average of 2 days in each town. This meant that they didn't have time to rest at all and had to go to the next town after resting. Chapter 159. She was so tired that she wanted to lie in bed immediately when she returned to the arranged residence after finishing her work at night. Even the video call with Hu Jinyao at night ended in a hurry. She had just finished seeing a patient that day when she received a call from Shi Mengwan. What's wrong, Qingsang? It was already afternoon, and fewer people came to see the doctor than in the morning. Su Qingsang greeted the doctor next to her. She took her phone and went outside to answer the call. Qingsang. Shi Mengwan told Su Qingsang what happened today. What do you think your young lady wants to do? Su Peijian asked Shi Mengwan to order a wedding dress. Why did it sound so magical to Su Qingsang? I don't know. Su Qingsang didn't know much about Su Peijian, but she said, I think you might be thinking too much. Maybe she just admires your design. How is that possible? You didn't see her face when she entered the door. She looked so arrogant, as if I owed her money. I really wanted to tell her to come if she wanted to. I don't want to wait on you. Don't. Su Qingsang smiled. Why not design? Just take it. And do it well. When the time comes, make a lot of money from her. That's your style, Miss Shi. Yes. That's true. Shi Mengwan nodded. I think it's not normal for Su Peijian to come to me. I'm thinking about what I have that she can plot against me. You're thinking too much. Does she want to deal with me through you? That's not Su Peijian's personality. That's true. Shi Mengwan smiled and felt that she was thinking too much. Well, you're still in the countryside. I'll talk to you later. Remember to take good care of yourself and don't get too tired. Yes. I know. You too. Shi Mengwan gave a few more instructions, hung up the phone, and turned around. She found Qiu Yanbo standing behind her. She was shocked and couldn't even hold her phone. Sorry. Qiu Yanbo smiled calmly. I dropped something here. As he spoke, he picked up a wallet from where he had been sitting. Shi Mengwan didn't notice it just now. By the way, you just said that Qing Sang went to the countryside. Yes. Go to Qingyuan. Shi Mengwan was halfway through her sentence when she suddenly looked at Qiu Yanbo defensively. Mr. Qiu, why do you care about this? It's nothing. I was just asking. Qiu Yanbo's expression was indifferent. Speaking of which, I've been working with Hu Jinyao recently, so I'm just asking. You don't need to be so nervous. Although Shi Mengwan felt that it was strange, she didn't think too much about it. She sent Qiu Yanbo off with a smile, not noticing the flash of scheming light in his eyes. After hanging up the phone, Su Qingsang found that it was raining outside, and the number of patients had begun to decrease. Today was her 9th day in the countryside. They had already visited 4 towns. Tomorrow, he would go to the 5th village. Everyone packed up and planned to leave for another town the next morning. After midnight, the rain became heavier and heavier. The next morning, when the medical team was about to set off, it was still raining. Everyone looked at Director Li, waiting for his instructions. Director Li took out his phone to check the time and checked the weather forecast. It's been raining, and it won't stop for the entire morning. It's only a 2-hour drive to Gaoya town. Let's hurry up and set off now. Since Director Li said so, everyone carried their things into the car and got in together. Chapter 160. He took out his phone and glanced at it. Because of the rain, the signal was very weak. It's raining. Let's go to Gaoya town now. My eyelids keep twitching. After editing the message, Su Qingsang deleted it. What was wrong with her? She sent messages like this to Hu Jinyao for no reason. Not to mention that he wasn't here now. Even if he was, he still had to go to the place he wanted to go. Let's go to Gaoya town now. It will probably take a while for us to settle down. I'll contact you when we get there. A few minutes later, she received a reply from Hu Jinyao. Give him a kiss. Remember to take care of yourself. Don't tire yourself out. Looking at the affectionate emoji sent by Hu Jinyao, Su Qingsang's uneasiness disappeared. I know. You too, he replied, feeling that his tone wasn't intimate enough. But that was already her limit. Thank you for your concern, my wife. Honey, don't forget to miss me. Su Qingsang looked at that sentence and seemed to be able to imagine Hu Jinyao's expression at that moment. She chuckled. He lifted his eyes to look out of the window, and the smile on his lips could not be suppressed. Miss him. Of course he wanted to. However, she did not want to tell him. The road to Gaoya town was basically a mountain road. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. The people in the car looked at the rain and were not in the mood to chat. He only hoped that this part of the journey would be smoother. Halfway through the car, the driver suddenly braked. Su Qingsang fastened her seatbelt. Otherwise, she might have flown out. Not good, there seems to be a landslide in front. The driver looked at the windshield that was constantly being washed by the rain, and his expression was solemn. There were 2 cars in their group. Director Li poked his head out. Can we rush over? Let me try. The driver's face was livid as he quickly stepped on the accelerator. Su Qingsang wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The landslide in front of them was severe, and big rocks kept rolling down. Before the driver could rush over, a few large rocks rolled down. Their car was stuck in the middle of the road, unable to move. The cars behind also stopped. Rocks were still rolling down from above. The driver drove the car to the side where there was a big tree. He used the tree to stabilize the car and prevent it from sliding down the hill. Boulders and sand were still rolling down. Yishinge took out her phone to call the police. Before the phone could be pulled out, a large rock fell on the car. The car hit a tree and slid down the slope for a long distance. Su Qingsang's phone flew out. Before she could pick it up, the car slid down a lot more. Ah! A few nurses in the car were already shouting. Steady yourself. Calm down. Director Lee had never encountered such a situation before. He wanted them to calm down. But the car began to slide again. Su Qingsang gripped the handle of the front seat tightly. His heart sank as he watched the car slide down the slope. Another boulder fell, and the car they were in followed the car behind it, sliding further down the hill. There were even signs of the car overturning. This time, even Su Qingsang couldn't stay calm. Looking at the phone that she had thrown, she tried to pick it up. At this moment, the car completely rushed down the hill. At the headquarters of Tianyu Group in Rong City. Sitting in the conference room, Wu Jinyao glanced at Hui Yifan and Hui Yang, who were sitting below, and picked up the document in front of him. Chapter 161. Hui Yifan and Hui Yang both worked in Tianyu. One was the manager of the sales department, and the other was the manager of the marketing department. President Hua, I don't think you can blame me for this. Hui Yifan was very clear about his work and personal interests in the company. He usually called Hui Jinyao. What do you mean? Nothing. Hui Yifan chuckled. Everyone in Rome City knows that President Hua is very capable. You've almost finished negotiating this kind of case before. If I continue to talk, won't I be stealing your credit? Hui Jinyao stared at Hui Yifan's face and felt that his smile was asking for a beating. President Hua, don't be angry. Don't you think so? As your younger brother, I can't possibly steal your credit, can I? So you can deliberately not do anything and let this project that could have already started be in a state of stagnation until now? Hui Jinyao's voice was slightly cold, and he casually knocked on the table with his hand. But that was a precursor to his wrath. How could that be? Aren't you back now? You can continue. Besides, I've already asked the chairman. The current chairman of Tianyu Group was Hu Mingguang, Hu Jinyao's father. You're using the chairman to pressure me. I wouldn't dare. I'm just stating the truth. Hui Yifan kept smiling. Hu Jinyao nodded and said, Good, very good. Since Manager Hu felt that this kind of thing needed to be consulted. I think you don't want to stay in this position anymore. Why don't you leave the business department and go to the logistics department? Hu Jinyao. Hui Yifan stood up. What do you mean? Nothing. Hu Jinyao ignored the change in his expression. This company belongs to those who are capable. If the company can't operate normally after I leave for a few days, then what do I need you for? The atmosphere in the conference room had been very gloomy. Hu Jinyao ignored him and stood up. I will personally go to the Lin Corporation today to negotiate the contract. But this is the last time. I hope that when I'm not around, you can display your strengths and do your own things well. Instead of using such an evasive attitude to deal with me. Hui Yifan glared at Hu Jinyao, his eyes dark. Hu Jinyao glanced around the meeting room. As for how to deal with Manager Hua. Effective immediately. Hui Yifan took half a step forward and was about to argue with Hu Jinyao. Hui Yang held his hand from behind and shook his head gently at him. Hui Yifan stopped and looked at Hu Jinyao's back with a gloomy look. On the other side, Su Qingsang's car kept going down and was hit by the car behind it twice. Su Qingsang's head accidentally hit the seat in front of her when she was falling. She lost consciousness for a while. When she woke up, she found that their car was stuck halfway up the mountain. A few big trees were caught. Her body was held in place by the seatbelt. Her head was dizzy and painful. She tried her best to raise her head to look at the situation and environment in front of her. Only then did she realize that she was not the only one who was awake. The other members of the medical team were also awake, but no one dared to move. The driver's body was hanging from the driver's seat, and his head had hit the glass in front of him. His face was covered in blood, and he had already fainted. Director Li, Deputy Director Qin, and a few nurses were awake, but they did not dare to move. That was because the car was supported by those trees. The car was leaning at a 40-degree angle. Chapter 162. Qingsang. You're awake. Chen Xiaoyu was relieved to see that Su Qingsang was awake. Are you okay? Su Qingsang shook her head gently. Director Qin, are you okay? I'm fine. Deputy Director Qin looked at the environment in front of him and sighed in his heart. What should we do? We can't move at all. It's okay if we can't move, but I'm afraid that the bus will rush down. They were stuck by the trees now, but what if the trees couldn't bear it? Su Qingsang's words made everyone silent. Everyone thought of this terrible possibility. Where's your phone? Who still has your phone? Call. Su Qingsang's phone had already fallen in the front seat. She couldn't take it out at all. It's useless. There's no signal. Deputy Director Li's phone was in his pocket. He took it out and looked a little dispirited. I've called several times. Maybe it's because of the heavy rain and thunder. Deputy Director Qin smiled bitterly. Now we can only wait for someone to pass by and save us. Wait for someone to pass by. Su Qingsang looked at the environment in front of her and couldn't be optimistic at all. Not to mention the fact that they were in the middle of nowhere. Even if someone passed by, she didn't know how long it would take for them to arrive with such a big mudslide. She tried to move her body. It was very uncomfortable to be half hanging like this. The seat belt was uncomfortable, but without it, her whole body would fall to the front seat. She looked out of the window again. The bus was closed. Only the windows at the front and the back could be opened. The other unconscious people in the bus woke up one after another. Fortunately, the people in the bus were all doctors. Everyone was wearing seatbelts, so they were only slightly injured. But they couldn't just hang like this. We should find a way to climb out, someone suggested. We can climb out. But it's raining heavily outside. More importantly, what if we move too much and cause the bus to continue to rush down? Were there still trees at the foot of the hill stuck to them? More importantly, it was raining heavily outside, unless there's a big crane to fix the bus and then we climb out one by one. It would be great if there was a big crane at this time. Everyone thought so. But how was that possible? Those who have cell phones, try your best to make calls and ask for help. Most people's phones were placed beside them. Everyone took out their phones to make calls, but there was no signal without exception. Are we going to die here today? The young nurse, Huang Jie, looked scared. She didn't want to die. Don't talk nonsense. Su Qingsang had been looking out the window. She turned to look at her and said, "We'll be fine." How could he be fine? It's dangerous just looking at it. Yes. Huang Jie sounded like she was about to cry. I don't want to die. I'm not married yet. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment, thinking about Hu Jinyao. What would he do if he knew that something had happened to him? She didn't know and couldn't guess. But at this moment, she really hoped that Hu Jinyao could be like a hero in a movie. He had suddenly descended from the sky to save her. She knew it was impossible. The accident happened in the morning. Su Qingsang wasn't sure if she was hallucinating when it happened in the afternoon. Chapter 163. She carefully tilted her body and looked up. She could vaguely see an excavator working behind the trees. How was that possible? Not only her, but everyone else in the car also became excited. However, no one dared to move. They were afraid that the car would fall or something. The sound of the machine behind them grew louder and louder. When the rescuers' faces appeared outside the car window, Su Qingsang's heart was at ease. Huang Jia, who was behind her, cried tears of joy. No one dared to move, waiting for the rescuers to rescue them. Soon, the rescuers broke the window and began to pull people out one by one. The first person to be rescued was the driver. He didn't wake up. Obviously, he was injured. After he went out, Director Li, Deputy Director Qin, and Huang Jia were all rescued. Su Qingsang wasn't the last. When she went out, the paramedics were resuscitating the driver. He had a head injury, but fortunately, it wasn't fatal. Su Qingsang was about to help when she was pulled back. Are you okay? The familiar voice stunned her. She turned around and was shocked to see Qiu Yanbao's enlarged face. Why are you here? She even forgot how to address him. She just stared at him blankly. Are you okay? Qiu Yanbao didn't answer her question. Instead, he looked her up and down. Su Qingsang had bumped into the front seat. There was a bump on her forehead, but it wasn't bleeding. Are you hurt? Qiu Yanbao reached out to touch her forehead. Su Qingsang instinctively avoided it, but she was a little weak because she had been hanging in the seat for too long. Qiu Yanbao's hand still touched her forehead. She snorted. He took out a bottle of water from behind him. Drink some water first. The food is in the car. The car can't stop here, so you have to walk. Su Qingsang was very thirsty. She reached out to take the bottle of water and drank a few mouthfuls. Her throat felt much better. Thank you. You're welcome. She looked so disheveled. Her hair was messy, her face pale, and there was sweat on her forehead. Qiu Yanbao couldn't help but raise his hand to wipe her sweat. Su Qingsang was once again startled by the sudden approach. She dodged backward again, and at the same time, she avoided his hand. This was a place where a large landslide had occurred. Her heel was a rock. Su Qingsang lost her balance and almost fell. Qiu Yanbao was quick to catch her. Be careful. He put his hand on her shoulder. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable. The situation in front of her was so weird. I can stand on my own. Can you let me go first? Okay, Qiu Yanbao said, but he showed no signs of letting go. He supported her body to the side. Stand here. The terrain here is flatter. Su Qingsang really wanted to avoid his hand on her body, but the road in front of her was really not smooth. Then, because she wanted to avoid him, she tried to lie down on the rocks several times. Not only did she not walk steadily, but she almost fell down several times. If Qiu Yanbao hadn't steadied her, she would have easily fallen. Thank you. Su Qingsang was not an ungrateful person. He thought for a moment and tried to find something to talk about. Why are you here? What do you think? How did Su Qingsang know? She wasn't Su Peijian. Moreover, she didn't even know what kind of business the Cho family had. Chapter 164. Chiu Yanbo smiled. He helped Su Qingsang to a tree at the back, where they stood on a relatively balanced spot. What kind of business do you think there is in this small Qingyuan county that I can negotiate with? Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond to this question. Then Chiu Yanbo stood in front of her. He didn't seem to be uncomfortable with the chaotic and noisy environment around him. If I say that I'm here to look for you, do you believe me? Su Qingsang widened her eyes and looked at him. When their eyes met, she twitched the corner of her mouth and said, "Brother-in-law, this joke is not funny." "It's a joke." Chiu Yanbo lowered his head and looked at Su Qingsang's face. "Also, don't call me brother-in-law. I'm not married to your sister yet. In my heart, you are my brother-in-law." Su Qingsang took a step back as she spoke. Behind her was the trunk of the big tree, and she had nowhere to retreat. Chiu Yanbo took a step forward. "But I suddenly realized that I don't want to treat you as my little girl anymore. What should I do?" Chiu Yanbo. Su Qingsang's face was cold. She couldn't accept Chiu Yanbo's attitude at all. "I'm already married, and you're going to marry my sister soon. I hope you can respect yourself." Her voice wasn't loud. She had been hanging there for a long time, so she was still a little weak. Chiu Yanbo stared at the obvious rejection in her clear eyes. His mind, however, was replaying the scene of her talking to Hu Jinyao on the phone. He really wanted Su Qingsang to have the same look in her eyes because of him. "Qingsang, did you know? The Cho family and the Su family had previously arranged an engagement. But it didn't say that it had to be your sister. If you are willing, I don't mind changing the bride." Was this person crazy? Su Qingsang stopped talking. He looked around and saw that most of the injured people had been rescued. The injured were tending to each other's wounds. Su Qingsang had no intention of talking to Chiu Yanbo. "Sorry, you don't mind, but I do. I'm still in the countryside, and I still have work to do." She stopped talking to Chiu Yanbo and turned to help. Chiu Yanbo was left looking at her back, his eyes full of determination. It only took Hu Jinyao one afternoon to sign the contract that Hu Yifan had been delaying. This was something that had been decided long ago. It made no difference whether he was here or not. However, Hu Yifan had kicked the ball back to him. What if he didn't return to Rong City? What did Hu Yifan want to do? Hu Jinyao refused to have dinner with the CEO of Lin's company and left after signing the contract with him. As soon as they left the company, Yang Wenchang, who had been following him, finally spoke. "President Hua." "Yes. Something happened in Qingyuan County." "What does the incident in Qingyuan County have to do with him?" Hu Jinyao didn't understand what Yang Wenchang was trying to say. But only for a few seconds. He suddenly stopped and looked at Yang Wenchang. "What did you say?" "I said something happened in Qingyuan County. It was a landslide. Because of the heavy rain, there was a large landslide." "Then, speak." Hu Jinyao's expression was already quite cold. "I tried to contact Miss Su, but I couldn't reach her." Hu Jinyao's face darkened, but Yang Wenchang had no choice but to finish the job. "Except for Miss Su, we can't get in touch with the rest of the medical team with her." Chapter 165. Hu Jinyao's eyes were dangerous. Yang Wenchang's face dropped. 3 hours ago. As soon as Yang Wenchang finished speaking, Hu Jinyao's face became even colder. 3 hours ago, and you're telling me now? When I received the news, you were signing a contract with Boss Lin. During this period of time, Hu Ji now shifted his focus to Lin City. Those who knew said that he was going to explore a new market, and those who didn't know said that he was avoiding responsibility. Especially since the Hu family still had 2 young masters who were eyeing him covetously. He really didn't want Hu Jinniao to make any more mistakes. Even so, Yang Wenchang's voice still lowered. Hu Jinniao's eyes were cold, and his tone was even colder. Help me book the fastest ticket. As for your punishment, you'd better pray that Qing Sang is fine, or else. There was no need to say anything else. Yang Wenchang quickly said, the ticket is booked. We can go to the airport now. Hu Jinniao's face became a little clearer, and he strode to the parking place. Although Su Qing Sang wasn't seriously injured, almost all of the medical staff who came this time had wounds of different sizes after going through the torment just now. Although it wasn't fatal, almost everyone was injured. After Deputy Director Li of the medical team called the relevant leaders, they decided not to go to Gaoya town. Just as a group of people followed the rescue team back to the center of Qingyuan County, a village in front of them was buried because of a large-scale landslide. The rescue team was now going to rescue as soon as possible. There was only a health center in this place. Seeing this situation, the doctors and nurses of the medical team didn't say that they were going to rest and helped. Although Su Qing Sang studied obstetrics and gynecology, as a doctor, every doctor had to know how to bandage and suture wounds. She couldn't care less about Qiu Yanbo. In the simple tent set up by the rescue team, she started to busy herself with the other doctors. Qiu Yanbo was ignored. However, he didn't feel uncomfortable. Instead, he followed behind and helped with great interest. At first, Su Qing Sang wanted to drive him away, but then she realized that he could really help, so she didn't say anything. At this time, no matter who he was, she just needed to catch him and use him. The relevant departments also acted very quickly. At night, more than 50 buried villagers had been rescued, and they were rescuing the other half overnight. Su Qing Sang was so busy that she didn't even have time to drink water, let alone eat. Qiu Yanbo came up to her after she stitched up a patient's wound and handed her a bottle of water and a piece of bread. Eat something first. Even if you want to save someone, you have to conserve your strength first. Thank you. Su Qing Sang was really hungry, so she didn't stand on ceremony. He took the water and gulped down a few mouthfuls. Be careful. Seeing that she almost choked, Qiu Yanbo reached out and patted her on the back. Su Qing Sang stiffened. She took a step back and glared at Qiu Yanbo. Thank you, but I'm fine. Qiu Yanbo tilted his head and looked at her. His expression was a little playful. Are you going to throw me away after using me? Whatever you say. Su Qingsang's voice was slightly cold. As a married woman, and you are my brother-in-law, it's better for us to keep our distance. Why didn't you tell me to keep my distance when I saved you? Su Qingsang frowned and looked at him with confusion. Chapter 166. Qiu Yanbo spread his hands. Why do you think the rescue came so quickly in Gaoya town? Because I was on my way to find you. I heard something happened, so I transferred people here as soon as possible. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. Although they had been in trouble for a long time, the people here came quickly. You can also watch the news now. There are several nearby towns that have experienced disasters of different degrees. They are not so lucky. Thank you. Su Qingsang nodded. This sentence was much more sincere than before. But I still say the same thing, you eat first. Qiu Yanbo glanced at the rain outside the tent. I don't think the rain will stop for a while. The rescue work is difficult. There may be other injured people sent here later. You doctors on the front line should save some strength. Su Qingsang didn't say anything and finished the water and bread in her hands. She glanced at Qiu Yanbo and turned to continue with her work. It's not cute at all. Qiu Yanbo raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself. He touched his chin. But it's quite interesting. Another hour passed, and the rescue workers rescued another 8 villagers. One of them was a pregnant woman who was 8 months pregnant. She had stopped breathing when she came out. The situation was very critical. The pregnant woman's husband was working outside and survived. Seeing this situation, he almost knelt down to the medical team doctors. Su Qingsang was not in the mood to talk to him. She followed Chief Qin and the nurses into the tent. The husband wanted to follow in but was stopped by Qiu Yanbo. Sir, if you go in, it will affect the medical staff. You'd better wait outside. Su Qingsang happened to hear this when she pulled up the tent. She couldn't help but look at Qiu Yanbo again. The husband finally stopped saying he wanted to go in. The rain outside slowly let up. Qiu Yanbo looked into the tent. There was no movement, so they could only wait. There was a doctor on the other side who needed a stretcher. Because Qiu Yanbo had been helping, the doctor called out. Qiu Yanbo didn't refuse and went over to help. After carrying the stretcher, he looked at the time. Su Qingsang had been in there for an hour. He took a bottle of water and 2 more pieces of bread, intending to give them to Su Qingsang when she came out. From the corner of his eye, he saw a person who shouldn't be here. Jinyao. When he saw Hu Jinyao also saw him. Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes slightly. At that moment, his gaze became extremely sharp. Boss Cho. President Hua. They already knew his identity. Qiu Yanbo didn't stand on ceremony. Hu Jinyao had barely stopped for the past few hours. He rushed all the way from Rong City to Lin City. After he got off the plane, he immediately rushed to Qingyuan County. As soon as he arrived at the center of the county, he received the most accurate news. It was said that Su Qingsang's medical team had encountered mudslides and landslides, and their survival was uncertain. Hu Jinyao's heart was in his throat. He couldn't contact Su Qingsang and didn't know how she was doing. He used all the forces he could use in the shortest time possible and finally got accurate information about Su Qingsang. Chapter 167. Hu Jinyao looked Qiu Yanbo up and down. His eyes were deep and unreadable. However, it only took him a few seconds to turn around and continue looking for Qingsang. When they arrived, they had already heard that the medical team was fine, so they were participating in the rescue. He had only turned halfway when Qiu Yanbo spoke as if he knew what he was going to do. Qingsang is having surgery inside. I don't think he'll come out so soon. He pouted and pointed at one of the tents. Hu Jinyao paused and turned around to look at Qiu Yanbo. Their eyes met, and there seemed to be some tension in the air. Hu Jinyao wasn't in a hurry to find Su Qingsang. He took a step forward and stood in front of Qiu Yanbo. Boss Cho, can I ask why you are here? What do you think? Qiu Yanbo didn't answer his question directly. His half-smile was full of mischief. I'm not familiar with Boss Cho, so naturally I wouldn't know. But I think the Li family and the Su family might know better, don't you think? Qiu Yanbo chuckled, his expression calm. Mr. Dai, you don't have to bring up the Su family and the Li family. Although the Cho family doesn't dare to say that they can cover the sky with one hand, no one can stop me if I want to do something. I admire President Chao's confidence. However, I also want to give you a piece of advice. What? Hu Jinyao casually put his hands into his trouser pockets, and his handsome face was a bit cold. Living in this world, one must know one's own limits and know where one's abilities lie. Secondly, one should know how to be content with what they have. Those who covet things that don't belong to them usually don't end up well. What do you think? Thank you for the reminder, President Hua. However, I'm a rebellious person by nature. I like to make things that don't belong to me mine. Only then would the process be interesting. What do you think? Hua Jinyao's face darkened. He was trying his best to restrain the urge to punch Qiu Yanbo. Wah, wah, the baby's cry came from inside. The husband was about to rush in when a nurse came out. Li Xiuli's family, mother and son are safe. She has some external injuries and needs to rest in bed. Thank you, doctor, thank you, doctor. When Su Qingsang and Director Qin came out of the tent, both of them were covered in sweat. None of them expected that she would encounter such a dangerous situation on this trip. Rubbing her brows, she was about to grab a bottle of water when 2 bottles of water appeared in front of her. Qiu Yanbo placed the water and bread in front of Su Qingsang. The other bottle of water was naturally handed over by Hua Jinyao. When Su Qingsang saw Hua Jinyao, she was so shocked that she even forgot to take the bottle of water. What's wrong? Are you stupid? Hua Jinyao put the water in her hand with a faint smile in his eyes. Seeing him suddenly appear, Su Qingsang didn't take the bottle from his hand. She just stared at him blankly, unable to come back to her senses for a long while. Jinyao. She looked at the bottle of water and then at him. Was he real? Yes. Hua Jinyao nodded. Looking at her dumbfounded expression, he wanted to laugh. Seeing that she didn't move, he couldn't help but reach out and pull Su Qingsang into his arms. It was already past the Mid-Autumn Festival. Even though Lin City was a southern city, it was still a little chilly. Hua Jinyao had been worried about Su Qingsang all the way here, so he didn't even open an umbrella. His clothes were already wet, and his body was full of water vapor. Su Qingsang was held by him, but she didn't feel the coldness of his body at all. Chapter 168. She didn't know when it started to rain again, but it was just a drizzle. Hua Jinyao hugged Su Qingsang very tightly. His lips were right next to her cheek. He turned his face and kissed her cheek a few times. His lips were also cold. Su Qingsang shrunk her neck. It seemed that she only realized what she had done at that moment. She gently pushed Hua Jinyao to let go of her. Hua Jinyao let go of her but didn't let go of her. You scared me today. Su Qingsang was also shocked, not to mention him. The moment she was hung on the car, she really thought that she was going to die. Why are you here? Su Qingsang didn't tell him that she was scared at that moment. She was actually more curious about why he was here. I was worried about you. So I came. Hua Jinyao looked at her with clear eyes. Under the not very bright lights, she could see that his eyes were filled with her shadow. Su Qingsang's heart was like a feather gently brushing against the lake of her heart when she was being looked at like that. Her heart, which had always been calm and indifferent, could no longer be calm at that moment. The atmosphere between the two of them was really too beautiful. Even in such an environment, it couldn't be ignored. Ahem. Qingsang, eat something first. You should be hungry again. Qiu Yanbo's voice interrupted Su Qingsang's thoughts. Only then did she realize where she was and what kind of environment she was in. She blushed and took a step back uncomfortably. She didn't take the bread and water from Qiu Yanbo's hand. Instead, she took the water from Hua Jinyao's hand. Have you been here for a long time? According to the time, Qiu Yanbo had appeared early. However, as soon as Hua Jinyao heard that something had happened to her, he immediately rushed over. Not long. Hu Jinyao looked behind him. Yang Wenchang had finally arrived. He had arrived a long time ago. However, since Hu Jinyao was here, he naturally had a reason. In the name of disaster relief, he had delivered all kinds of necessities for the people. Yang Wenchang had just gone to arrange the whereabouts of these items. Now that he finally had the time to come, he was carrying large and small bags of food in his hands. When she met Hu Jinyao's eyes, she swallowed the word president. Dr. Su. Yang Wenchang looked directly at Su Qingsang and handed the bag in his hand to her. This is some food. You and the other doctors and nurses in the medical team have worked hard. Not at all. Su Qingsang shook her head. It's what we should do. She looked at the bag in Yang Wenchang's hand and was stunned by the label on it. Why are there so many? She looked at Hu Jinyao and asked, Did you prepare this? That's right. Yang Wenchang glanced at Hu Jinyao and said, Hua. Jinyao is an excellent employee of our company. This time, he was the one who applied for the company to send a lot of supplies in the name of the earthquake. So don't feel burdened. The corners of Qiu Yanbao's mouth curled up. He looked at Hu Jinyao with a mocking smile. Of course, Hu Jinyao saw his expression. He turned to hold Su Qingsang's hand and said, Don't worry about this. Someone will take care of it. You, on the other hand, have a tiring day. You should eat something and rest. Yes. Su Qingsang was tired, but she wouldn't force herself at this time. Only by conserving her strength could she better participate in the work. Holding the bag that Yang Wenchang had given her, she turned around to look for the other medical staff and distributed the food and drinks to them. Qiu Yanbao watched Su Qingsang's figure walk away. He retracted his gaze and looked at Hu Jinyao. Chapter 169. Qiu Yanbao's expression was unreadable. Hu Jinyao's expression was slightly cold. What does President Qiu mean? Nothing. Qiu Yanbao smiled. I just thought it was strange. I don't know who said it, but the first element of marriage is sincerity. President Hua, am I right? Hu Jinyao didn't take this threat seriously. So, I mean to say that a marriage which begins with deceit has no sincerity, and probably no loyalty. He really did not know how long such a marriage could last. What do you think? Don't worry, Boss Cho. Hu Jinyao's expression didn't change, but his tone was a little cold. It doesn't matter how you started it. What matters is how you maintain it and what kind of results you get. When it came to time, there was really no need for Boss Cho to worry. I believe it will last as long as I live. Is that so? President Hu sure is confident. Qiu Yanbao smiled and raised the bottle of water in his hand. In that case, I can only wish you all the best, President Hua. Hu Jinyao glanced at Qiu Yanbao coldly and turned to look for Su Qingsang. The rescue continued, and the medical team arranged for people to take turns on duty. Those who were not injured would keep watch for the first half of the night, while those who were injured would keep watch for the second half. Su Qingsang didn't think that the wound on her forehead was a wound. He directly requested to keep watch until midnight. By the time Hu Jinyao arrived, everything had been arranged. Aren't you tired? Do you want to rest for a while? Hu Jinyao had never been in such a situation before. Everything in front of him was quite unfamiliar to him. More than a dozen villagers were buried under the ruins of the village. Batch after batch of rescue team members went up to the rescue. Su Qingsang looked at the other side and shook her head gently. It's okay. I'll rest later. Can you drink coffee? Hu Jinyao looked at her, holding a cup of freshly brewed instant coffee in his hand. I just rushed it. This is the only one I have now. But I'm afraid you won't be able to sleep after drinking it. I'm fine. Su Qing-sang took the cup of coffee and took a sip. The warm coffee warmed her stomach. She turned to Hu Jinyao and said, I'm fine now. You can go back tomorrow morning if you have nothing to do. I still have work to do. Don't worry. I'm here for disaster relief. My boss won't blame me. Really? Of course it's true. Honey, you don't believe me. Hu Jinyao moved his face closer to hers as he spoke, looking a little aggrieved. Su Qing-sang couldn't stand it and moved to the side. Stop it. There were so many people around. Why didn't they look at where they were? I'm not joking. Hu Jinyao put his arm around Su Qing-sang's waist and said, do the math yourself, honey. How many days have I not seen you? It hasn't been that long, right? 10 days. Hu Jinyao looked at her. We haven't seen each other for 10 days. Honey, don't you miss me? Stop it. Su Qing-sang looked around and said in a low voice, let go of me. It's not good to be seen. So what if I saw it? You are my wife. Not only did Hu Jinyao not let go, but he also hugged her even tighter. We are a couple. What's wrong with a hug? Don't even mention hugging, even if we do it now. Hu Jinyao's mouth was covered by Su Qing-sang. She glared at him and said, Hu Jinyao, that's enough. Just look at what he's saying. Not enough. Hu Jinyao still had a lot of sweet words to say. Qing-sang. Chapter 170. He turned around and glared at the person in front of him. The expression on his face could not be considered pleasant. Su Qing-sang took the opportunity to move away from his arms and took a big step back. Qiu Yanbo turned to look at Su Qing-sang as if he didn't see Hu Jinyao's sullen face. Qing-sang, I just wanted to tell you that there are more injured people being sent over. Su Qing-sang looked in the direction he was pointing. She nodded and turned to look at Hu Jinyao. I'm going to work. Find a place to rest. It's getting late. I'm fine. If you won't sleep, then I won't sleep either. Hu Jinyao's sweet words seemed to be at his fingertips. Su Qing-sang rubbed her forehead, feeling a little embarrassed. These words could be said in private, but there were outsiders here. Seriously, Su Qing-sang glanced at Hu Jinyao and quickly went to work. After midnight, the doctors and nurses who were in charge of the handover woke up. Su Qing-sang finally had time to rest for a while. The medical team had a special tent to rest in, with many people sharing one tent. Hu Jinyao had been waiting for Su Qing-sang. When she was done, he pulled her into the tent that he and his men had set up. You can sleep here for a while. There's no need. Don't make it special. How is this special treatment? Hu Jinyao held her hand. This place is so small. I feel like you're wronged. Hu Jinyao. That's enough, my wife. Don't argue with me about these small things. You'd better get some rest. I guess I'll be busy tomorrow. All right. Su Qing-sang thought about it and agreed, so she stopped arguing. The place was limited and the environment was simple. She simply washed up and went to bed. When he entered the tent, he found that Su Qing-sang had already fallen asleep. She had been busy just now, and there were many people around her, so Hu Jinyao hadn't been able to take a good look at her. Now that he was free, he took out the ointment he had prepared earlier and sat down beside Su Qing-sang. He had noticed that Su Qing-sang's forehead was a little swollen. He didn't know how he got hurt. He used the emergency light to apply the ointment on Su Qing-sang's wound. His movements weren't big, but Su Qingsang only moved a little. She was in a deep sleep. She was probably exhausted. After applying the medicine, Hu Jinyao stared at her face for a while. Finally, he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Only then did he lie down beside her and rest together with her. Su Qingsang woke up before dawn the next day. Actually, no one could really sleep well that night. The whole night was filled with the sound of excavators and all sorts of noises. As soon as she woke up, Hu Jinyao, who was outside, heard the noise and poked his head in. "Why don't you sleep a little longer?" It was too late when he came yesterday, so he only saw it clearly when the sun rose. The faint shadows in Su Qingsang's eyes suggested that she hadn't had a good rest. Hu Jinyao's heart ached. He even had the urge to light his cigarette and take Su Qingsang back to Lin City. "I'm not sleeping anymore." Hearing the noise outside, Su Qingsang quickly sat up, stood up, and stretched her limbs. Su Qingsang walked out of the tent and saw that the people around her were all busy. She casually washed up and headed to the tent where the medical team was located. "Why don't you at least eat something first?" Hu Jinyao held her hand. He handed the breakfast that he had prepared beforehand to her and said, "Eat breakfast first. I won't let you go if you don't eat." Su Qingsang looked at his stubborn eyes and had no other choice but to take it. She ate very quickly, without any elegance or gentleness. Chapter 171. Su Qingsang took a few sips of the milk he handed to her, but didn't say anything in the end. After finishing it, she waved her hand and was about to leave. "Honey." Hu Jinyao really lost to her. He took out a tissue and handed it to her. No matter how anxious she was, she didn't need to disregard her image to this extent, right? Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She had been too anxious. She took the tissue and wiped her face. Without looking at Hu Jinyao, she hurried to treat the wounded. After a few steps, she stopped and turned around to look at Hu Jinyao. "By the way, if there's nothing else, you should leave. It's a mess here. I don't think I'll go back so soon." Hu Jinyao gave Su Qingsang a really sad look. "Honey, isn't it good for me to stay here with you?" Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. "It's not good or bad. It's just inappropriate." "How is it inappropriate?" "It's just not suitable." Su Qingsang waved at him. "Remember. Let's go back as soon as the traffic starts." After Su Qingsang left, Hu Jinyao was still holding the half-empty bottle of milk in his hand. He turned around and saw Qiu Yanbo looking at him with his arms crossed. "TSK, looks like President Hu is also despised. Mr. Qiu, you really have nothing better to do." Hu Jinyao glanced at him coldly. "But you think too much. That's because Qingsang loves me. I know very well whether or not I feel sorry for you." Qiu Yanbo moved closer to Hu Jinyao. "I'm curious how Qingsang would feel if she found out that her husband lied to her." "I'm curious too. If the Li family and the Su family knew what you're thinking right now, how would they feel?" "President Hu, you're worrying too much." Back then, the Cho family had an engagement with the Su family, but it wasn't specified who would be the executor of the engagement. Speaking of which, Qingsang's surname is also Su. Hu Jinyao didn't look too good. "Let me remind you, Mr. Cho. Qingsang was already married. She's my wife now." "I know." Qiu Yanbo nodded. "But what about marriage? This marriage could still be divorced. What's more, I'm afraid Qingsang doesn't know that her marriage is a sham." "Boss Cho, be careful with your words. It's better not to talk nonsense without solid evidence." Is there no evidence? Qiu Yanbo lowered his voice. The young master of the Hua family in Rong City is engaged to the Su family. Everyone in Rong City knows about this. Looking at Hua Jinyao's unchanging expression, he was impressed that Hua Jinyao could still be so calm at a time like this. But I'm also really curious. The dignified young master of the Hua family, the president of the Tianyu group, had actually come to Lin City, thousands of miles away from Rong City, to marry an illegitimate daughter who had been detested by her family. I'm really curious about the reason behind this. I wonder if President Hua would be willing to answer my questions. Hua Jinyao's expression slowly became serious. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Qiu Yanbo in front of him. Qiu Yanbo generously let him see. Seeing that he didn't speak, he added, I'm here because I can be honest with my heart. I just don't know if President Hua can do it. Hua Jinyao's expression didn't change. Yes or no, I don't need to explain to Mr. Qiu. Excuse me. He turned around and left. Yang Wenchang had also woken up and seemed to be looking for him. Chapter 172. It wasn't the first time Su Qingsang had faced death. But this was the most tragic one. The rescue team brought over the buried family of 3. When they arrived, all of them had no signs of life. The entire medical team didn't make a sound. They just looked at the family of 3. The youngest child looked like he was only 4 or 5 years old. Deputy Director Chen was the first to react. He picked up the white cloth and covered the child. Su Qingsang covered the other person with the white cloth. She knew that this was inevitable, but facing such a tragic scene still made her feel like acting. When Hua Jinyao found her at noon, he immediately noticed that she wasn't in a good mood. Honey, are you too tired? Su Qingsang shook her head and glanced at Hua Jinyao. Eat. Hua Jinyao came over with instant noodles in his hand. It's ready. The conditions here are limited. You can eat first. As he spoke, he put the instant noodles on the simple table beside him. It's rare that it's not raining anymore. It'll be easier for the rescue work to start. You should eat something, or you'll be out of energy in the afternoon. It rained all night last night and didn't stop until this morning. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang suddenly reached out and hugged him. Hua Jinyao was stunned. It was rare for Su Qingsang to take the initiative. He should have enjoyed it, but it was obviously not the right time. What's wrong? What happened? Hua Jinyao reached out and wrapped his arms around her waist. His voice was so gentle that he didn't even realize it. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. Disasters had always been like this. When it came, no one would be spared. Hua Jinyao didn't know why he was like this, so he could only guess. Are you too tired? Su Qingsang shook her head. She didn't want to talk at this time. Then, Hua Jinyao looked into the distance. The medical team was actually some distance away from the landslide. This was just the first aid point. After the injured were treated, they would be immediately transferred to the county hospital. There were still people searching for them. The longer time passed, the lower the survival rate. How could he forget this? Honey. Hua Jinyao hugged Su Qingsang's waist tightly and said in a very soft voice, birth, aging, illness, and death, natural disasters, these are all unavoidable. You don't want it either. Don't blame yourself. How could Su Qingsang not know that? But he could only watch helplessly as his life was taken away in front of him. Even if he was a doctor, he still made her feel uncomfortable. All right. Hua Jinyao patted her on the back. Honey, hurry up and eat something. Think about it this way. You have to take care of yourself first. Only then can you save more people and help more people. Don't you agree? As he spoke, Hu Jinyao took a step back. He reached out and stroked her cheek. I believe that you will definitely save more people, right? His eyes were deep and firm. Su Qingsang looked at him. Even though the gloom in her heart hadn't dissipated, she felt much better. His words and his embrace were like a hot spring, nourishing her heart bit by bit. Whether it was the incident with Zhang Mei last time or this time, Su Qingsang was extremely glad that Hu Jinyao had always been there for her. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang looked at him and met his eyes. Thank you. She had never believed in love, nor was she willing to believe in men. Chapter 173. The rescue work lasted for 3 days. Except for a few missing villagers, the casualties had been confirmed. Su Qingsang and the medical team she was in had been working around the clock. As long as they were still breathing, they would be able to save their lives. Some of them were beyond their abilities. Hu Jinyao stayed with her for 3 days. She performed the surgery and helped to deal with the patients. He became a volunteer and kept himself busy. Besides him, there was Qiu Yanbo. He had also been very busy and had done a lot of things with them. 3 days later, the rescue work came to an end. The doctors in Qingyuan County took over. Su Qingsang and the others finally received instructions from the higher-ups to return to Lin City. Su Qingsang came in the medical team's car, but she got in Hu Jinyao's car to go back. During this period of time, she had not slept well at all. As soon as she got in the car, Hu Jinyao adjusted the seat for her. It'll take more than 2 hours to get back to Lin City. You should sleep. What about you? Aren't you sleepy? I'm not sleepy. Hu Jinyao found a blanket, opened it, and covered her with it. Go to sleep. Su Qingsang glanced at him and didn't refuse. She yawned, laid her body flat, and fell asleep. When she woke up, she found that she was already home in Lin City. She slept so soundly that she didn't even know how she got into the house. She looked around awkwardly but didn't see Hu Jinyao. When she came out of the room, she didn't see him. Sister Lu, the part-time helper, had arrived and was cooking in the kitchen. Sister Lu, have you seen Hu Jinyao? He seems to be in the study. Sister Lu didn't stop working. He told me to call him after dinner. It's almost time for dinner. Su Qingsang nodded and followed her into the study. Hu Jinyao seemed to be busy. He sat behind the desk with a laptop open in front of him and a pile of documents beside him. He stared at the screen sideways, not noticing that she had come in. Yes, do as I say. By the way, change the price on the tender. I'm not satisfied with what they did before. And the last time, he saw Su Qingsang enter the door from the corner of his eye. He whispered into the phone that he would talk to her later and hung up. You're awake. Yes. Su Qingsang took a few steps forward and looked at the documents on the table. There were so many words and all kinds of reports. She felt dizzy just by looking at them. Are you busy? I'm fine. Did your trip to Qingyuan County delay a lot of work? It was rare for Su Qingsang to feel a little guilty. What are you thinking? Nothing. Of course, Hu Jinyao wouldn't tell her that he had left behind a lot of things in Rome City to attend to, nor would he tell her that there were indeed a lot of things to do in the company. He reached out to hold Su Qingsang's hand and looked at her face. After sleeping for the whole journey, she looked much better than when she had left Qingyuan. They had been raised well. Go to bed early tonight and recover your energy. Su Qingsang didn't refute. Just as she was about to say that Hu Jinyao also needed a good rest, her phone rang. Ping Su, Su lines. Sister, are you okay? Su Yusin had heard that something had happened to Qing Yuan, but he only found out later that Su Qingsang was also there. When he found out, he was shocked and called Su Qingsang immediately. Chapter 174. Are you sure? Yes, I'm back. That's good. Su Yusin breathed a sigh of relief. He thought of something else and suddenly didn't know if he should tell Su Qingsang. What's wrong? Is there anything else? It's Qiu Yanbo. Su Yusin's face darkened when he said the name, and his voice became colder. He wants to break off the engagement with my sister. What did you say? Su Qingsang was shocked. When did this happen? Yesterday. Last night, Qiu Yanbo came to their door in a very solemn manner and gave them generous gifts, begging for their forgiveness. The Su family was confused, but Qiu Yanbo said that he wanted to break off the engagement with Su Peixian. Everyone in the Su family was shocked. Su Peixian, in particular, could not accept this reality at all. What did I do wrong? How have I wronged you? You want to break off the engagement? You're fine. You didn't do anything wrong. However, I suddenly realized that what I feel for you is not love, so I want to break off the engagement. Of course, Su Peixian wouldn't accept this excuse. We've been engaged for a long time. Why didn't you say that you didn't love me? Now that we've been engaged for 2 or 3 years, you're saying it's not love. Qiu Yanbo, how could there be such a thing? I'm sorry. Qiu Yanbo's attitude was firm. I was wrong before. I thought I could make do with being with Peixian like this. But I realized I couldn't do it. How powerful was Su Peixian? Hearing Qiu Yanbo's words, how could she swallow her pride? Don't make up excuses. Why don't you tell me directly if you have other women outside? I really didn't. Qiu Yanbo's expression was honest. If that's what you think, there's nothing I can do. I really just don't want to make do. Make do. Lu Fei was the eldest daughter of the Su family. How could Qiu Yanbo call her a mediocre person? How could Su Peixian tolerate such humiliation? She stood up without hesitation and pointed at Qiu Yanbo with a determined expression. So what? Do you think I care about you? Su Qinghui and Li Qinchua hadn't figured out how to solve the problem yet. Su Peixian said, "Get out. Get out of my house right now. I don't ever want to see you again." Yesterday happened to be Sunday, and Su Yusin was also at home. He was completely caught off guard by this turn of events. Li Qinchua liked Qiu Yanbo very much, and so did Su Qinghui. The 2 elders knew that Su Peixian was stubborn and proud, so they had to put in a good word for her. However, no matter what the 2 elders said, Qiu Yanbo insisted on breaking off the engagement. Not only that, but they also returned the token of engagement between the 2 families. This could be considered a firm attitude. Su Yusin was a little emotional. He had called Qiu Yanbo brother-in-law for the past few years. Who knew that such a change would happen? Su Qingsang was completely dumbfounded. Qiu Yanbo had been with them for the past few days, volunteering in Qingyuan County. Later, he said that he had something to do and came to say goodbye to her. Then, he returned to Lin City a day earlier. Su Qingsang thought that he had gotten over it after seeing her with Hu Jinyao every day. Who knew that not only did this person not think it through, but he also made such a big move as soon as he came back. Su Qingsang felt a surge of uneasiness in her heart. For so many years she was able to live in harmony with the Su family, maintaining a semblance of peace. It was only because she had no conflict of interest with the Sue family. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.